Good evening, members of the council. Please feel free to be seated. Before we commence tonight's formal proceedings, can I firstly invite my celebrant, Rose Cook-Monk, and secondly, my poet laureate, Billy Spakemon, to address the council. Rose?
May we be reminded of the wonderful borough in which we live and serve. We are joined together in this chamber, one borough, one council. We all come from different backgrounds, we carry different stories, and we have different political ideals. Yet this evening, like hundreds of times before, we share the same space for exactly the same purpose. We are here as a community. True unity does not mean that we have to think the same. It means that we walk in the same direction. It is the conscious choice to look past our surface differences and focus on shared humanity, sense of community, and love for our borough. When we choose unity, we build a foundation that no political or religious difference should break. At the heart of any strong community is the spirit of service and investment in a place that we call home. A move away from what can this community do for me, but rather one of what can I do for this community. And we all see this every day. Individuals doing small acts and huge projects, giving their time, love, and lives to others. Their acts of empathy, love, and dedication should be at the forefront of our inspiration to work for others around us. It is also the ones without a voice, the vulnerable, the elderly, the infirmed, and the lost, that we should strive to help and encourage. When we serve, we invest in others as well as ourselves. This bringing together of people requires one main ingredient: respect. It means listening to understand, not just to reply. It means acknowledging that our thoughts, beliefs, and values are not other people's or not necessarily right. It means valuing someone's dignity even when you disagree. When respect is our standard, everyone feels safe, valued, and heard. No single individual can lift an entire neighbourhood, and not one political group can truly change lives. But when we combine our talents, resources, energy, and truths, the impact multiplies, and a strong community of mutual respect and service is made, and a difference can be made. Let us commit to being that community of respect and service for the Black Country and its people. A reminder that leadership is a privilege, not a position. Voices that encourage and listen, hearts that lead with compassion and care. People that bring our communities, our faith groups, our schools, and our homes together. That could and should be our main focus. Our borough, our Black Country, our pride.
Thank you very much, Rose. I now call upon Billy Spakemon, the Mayor's Poet Laureate, to address the council.
Good evening. The piece that I've selected today was part of my life for 5 years when I was an 11-year-old kid. Every morning we went into assembly and they sang this song that is now over 120 years old. I've changed the words slightly and made it relevant to you, your duties, and to the people of Dudley. Mid ceaseless toil and the swirling smoke, with mighty furnace blows. Night skies ablaze, the mirk and the airs, the Dudley town arose. The sons and the daughters both have proclaimed a due meed of renown. Some wear the hero's crown, these folks on Dudley town. So, hurrah for the old folk of Dudley, who have built up the name of this town. You must do the same, it's your job to save all and these folks here in Dudley. Though the strife on life may be swift and clean, though you may find hard knocks to rule, don't wake for praise or gain. Carry on and all you save all these folks on Dudley town.
Thank you so much, Billy. Thank you, Rose. You're both free to leave the meeting if you would so wish to.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Extraordinary meeting. I've received apologies from councillors Damien Caulfield and Peter Drake. Are there any other apologies for absence? Councillor Paul Bradley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Pete Lee and Councillor Ian Sandel.
Councillor Bills.
Councillor Shazna Azad.
Thank you, we've got that. Thank you very much, Council. There's declarations of interest. There is a general dispensation under the Members' Code of Conduct, which means the councillors do not have to declare an interest in relation to ceremonial honours. Are there any other declarations of interest under the Members' Code of Conduct? There are none. Freedom of the Borough. I call upon the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the Council, I move that, pursuant to Section 249 of the Local Government Act 1972, the Council hereby confers the freedom of the Borough upon Armed Forces veterans, specifically Armed Forces personnel that have served in conflicts and on active duty. Councillor Shaukat Ali, Lowell Williams, Priory Park Boxing Club, Jude Bellingham and Morgan Rogers. And secondly, Mr. Mayor, that the Chief Executive be authorised to make any necessary arrangements regarding the presentation of the honours.
Thank you very much, Leader. Is there a seconder? Councillor Paul Bradley.
Yes, formally seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Now, it's customary at this point not necessarily to have speeches at this stage. There'll be an opportunity for us to do that at any awards presentation. However, does anybody wish to exercise their right to speak at this stage? No. I call upon the Leader if you wish to exercise any right of reply. Okay. Does Council agree? Does anybody disagree? That is clearly carried. Honorary Aldermen, Alderwomen, I call upon the Leader.
Again, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the Council, I move that pursuant to Section 249 of the Local Government Act 1972, the Council hereby confers the title of Honorary Alderman upon former Councillor Michael Evans. And secondly, that the Chief Exec be authorised to make any necessary arrangements regarding the presentation of the honour.
Is that seconded?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, similar to the position with regard to the previous item, it's customary not to have full speeches at this stage. However, I will give that opportunity if anybody does wish to speak. Okay, I call upon the leader to exercise his right of reply. He's turned that down. Is that carried? All those who agree? Anybody who disagrees? That is clearly carried. That concludes the business for the extraordinary meeting. We shall now move on to the ordinary meeting. Apologies for absence. I've received apologies from councillors Damien Caulfield and Peter Drake. I'm sorry, but I'm going to go through the same process again. Are there any other apologies for absence? Paul?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Ian Sandal and Councillor Pete Lee.
Thank you, Paul and Hilary.
That.
Thank you very much. Any prior declarations of interest made under the Members' Code of Conduct have been published online. I have received a non-pecuniary interest from Councillor Kazim Mughal with regard to item 10B on tonight's council meeting in respect of being a teacher within the authority. I now invite any members to declare any additional interests. Councillor Andrew Tromans.
Must declare a non-pecuniary interest in the later matter of the housing motion. I'm employed by a housing provider in the borough, but that has previously been declared on my register of interest.
Duly noted, Andrew, thank you. Okay, moving on, I move that the minutes of the annual meeting held on the 28th of May and the extraordinary meeting held on the 29th of June be confirmed as correct records and signed. Does the council agree? Anybody disagree? That is clearly carried. Under Mayor's announcements, myself and the Deputy Mayor are up here proudly wearing our robes. Do not feel that you have to join us if anybody wishes to take off their jackets this evening. It is relatively warm. Please feel free to do so. And I actually respect those councillors who already made that judgment, not waiting for the Mayor to do so. I respect that decision. I'll give them a couple of moments. You can remove your shirt if you want to, Councillor Dale. I'll be relatively... It's not what I've heard around the streets of Brockmore and Pensnett. If I'm moving swiftly on, it's a perfect opportunity. We have the flag in front of us, a reminder that tomorrow is the Black Country Day. There'll be events going on down the waterfront for those who wish to join us. And also the perfect opportunity, rather, I won't embarrass members individually, but you know who you are, who have been involved in some exceptional community events over the last few weeks and throughout the whole of July. And myself and the Deputy Mayor are doing all that we can to attend as many events as we can to wave that Black Country flag loudly and proudly and to promote Boston Dudley. On that note, the following day, we will have a small matter of the World Cup semi-final. And of course, we will be cheering on, I believe Dudley is the only borough in the whole of the country that has two members of its squad in Jude Bellingham and Morgan Rogers. So I think we can applaud tomorrow. Anybody would have seen me dancing on the streets of Stourbridge at 2 a.m. on Sunday morning, but I still made Wordsley by 10 o'clock the following day. And hopefully Wednesday won't be the end of it, but we have the opportunity to cheer on Come On Me Babbies on Sunday at the World Cup final. If that's not enough, a World Cup semi-final, this Friday we have the Mayor's annual cricket match down at Stourbridge Memorial Grounds. Please come along and support this important event, if only to give Hanif the support for the thankless work that you undertake year on year to win that. And again, hopefully we'll be bringing that home on behalf of the elected members this year. Importantly, we have Pride celebrations this Saturday, and myself, the Deputy Mayor Adam, the Mayoress and the Consort will be travelling around the streets of Dudley, raising our Pride flag with absolute pride, making the most of the events that we can. Those who are able to come and join us, please come along and support those events. Adoption of the Dudley Local Plan 2024 to 2041. I'll call upon the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, members of the Council, I move that the recommendations of the Cabinet be approved and adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Yes.
Yes, seconded, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. And I believe, just for clarity, an amendment that we had been served notice of, I believe, has been withdrawn. Thank you very much, Councillor Priest. So at this point, I can open it up for any speakers to indicate. I call upon Councillor Lawrence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. As a ward councillor for Kings Winford North and Wall Heath, which has two large greenbelt sites under threat, the fact that we are passing this local plan is a great relief to myself, to my residents, and those who have campaigned so hard for many years to make sure that these are not given away to developers. If this had been the Black Country Plan, then I'm sure they would have been included. And we have the decision taken by Councillor Harley to remove this council from that plan to thank for that. At the time, it was a huge decision, with many people saying it was a mistake. But here we are today with a local plan containing no greenbelt. I want to thank our officers who have put this plan together at speed with very few amendments from the planning inspector. I think we have to acknowledge the professionalism and skill that has taken. But if this plan passes this evening, which I certainly hope it does, then that is a battle won, but the war rages on. We know that immediately we have to start a new local plan based on the new government's ridiculous housing figures for Dudley. If we are forced to give up land for that number of houses, then it's inevitable that Greenbelt will have to be released, something that we on this side of the chamber are dead against. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Absolute pleasure and thank you. I call upon Councillor Shaukat Ali.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. A bit of a backache, so please me getting up. Mr Mayor, at the recent Cabinet meeting, I welcomed the fact that Planning Inspector had accepted an earlier delivery timescale for housing on Portersfield, recognising the importance of housing and regeneration in that area. Cavendish House site has remained undeveloped for many years, with hundreds of thousands of pounds spent on consultancy fees, with multiple regeneration proposals emerging and then falling away. Now that planning approval has been granted for 265 apartments at the site, disappointingly with limited social housing provision, and with the council having also acquired the derelict former Metro bar on the corner of Portersfield, it is now important that we see urgent progress and a clear commitment from the developer to get on with delivering the scheme. The council must also use every influence available to ensure this scheme does not become another example of delay. We have seen, for example, the new bus station. It has taken over 9 years, I think, from the time the planning was approved to almost coming to fruition. And residents will not accept another decade of waiting for the scheme on Portersfield to come to fruition. Where different parties own parcels of land in the area, every effort should be made for one party to acquire the remaining interests so that regeneration can be progressed as quickly as possible. And I still also believe that we do need an anchor store in the town centre in some location. What assurances can the leader give that the Cavendish House and Portersfield regeneration will now be delivered at pace so that visitors arriving at our new bus station and metro interchange are not greeted by derelict and undeveloped buildings, but by a welcoming gateway to Dudley Town Centre. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, Councillor Ali. Councillor Ryan Priest.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start by saying I support this local plan. The Liberal Democrats will support it tonight, and I think it's a crying shame that because of the change of the housing target, that it can only be temporary. I know officers have worked incredibly hard to produce a plan that's both viable to the inspectors and to local residents, and I think that's something that absolutely needs to be applauded. I also want to thank officers for listening to the petition raised by myself, Councillor Khan and former Councillor Ethan Stafford, and the Friends of Collygate and residents of the Highfield estate for removing the much-loved Highfield Green from the plan. For me, the next step, however, is to empower opposition to be a critical friend of the local plan on the two areas where the plan is weakest. And while we accept that that weakness is not a political or an operational flaw, we accept that that is a flaw of the wider planning system. First, we ask that Council produces an infrastructure delivery programme to be reported alongside this plan for scrutiny to consider. Most people in the borough are reasonable. They're not opposed to development or house building in the right places, but they're opposed to it when the infrastructure doesn't match, and too often that transparency isn't there. And whether that's the roads, the doctors, the schools, the parks, whatever it may be, councillors and residents need a full view of the impact of development in their area. Secondly, there is a need to address the huge shortfall of employment land that's in this local plan. And I think it's the height of apathy that the borough that was once the beating heart of the Industrial Revolution is now just shipping jobs out to Birmingham and beyond. And I think that has a massively disproportionate impact on low-income households compared to medium and high, where we create a borough without the high-paying jobs, where the only opportunity for those high-paying jobs lies in white-collar roles in other authority areas. I think it abandons the industrial and manufacturing heritage of the Black Country, and once that employment land is lost, it's unlikely to ever come back. However, I accept that this is a consequence, once again, of a ludicrous planning system in this country and not a political decision. But I ask that the council sets out a plan to protect and expand employment land and report back on land lost for scrutiny again to consider. I say this, and part of the reason that the amendment that we originally had was withdrawn, a fierce debate in Aftab's office, by the way, fiercer than anything I've faced in this room. We don't want any impact on the local plan. We think it's a sound local plan. All we're asking is that scrutiny is empowered to hold the administration to account on its delivery, whoever that administration may be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Priest. Councillor Andrew Tromans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I turn to the matter at hand, I wish to first of all give you a quick update. The goalposts are now in situ at Kent Road Playground, thanks to our excellent street scene team. And on behalf of the families of Wollaston Farm Estate, look forward to inviting you down there. Who knows, the next Jude Bellingham might be willing to come up from Wollaston. Absolutely. Just wanted to say, first of all, our group associates itself with the remarks of Councillor Lawrence. We agree that the officers and all concerned have produced a great local plan. Not going to touch on the Greenbelt, that's a matter that's been widely discussed here, but I would like to turn to another matter within the local plan. As you'll know, Mr. Mayor, the Stourbridge Ring Road is also known by two other names. It's known as the Racetrack and also to some others, the Noose. Since the 1960s, it has strangled the town centre, cutting it off from the communities around it and leaving residents with tired subways, hostile crossings and poor gateways into what is, in my opinion at least, the best appointed town centre in our borough. That's not to mention the roadmen in their modified Mazdas who race around late of an evening, causing misery and mayhem to all who live near the Ring Road. The local plan now accepts there is a problem, but we need more than words. We need a clear delivery plan for a safer surface crossings, greener gateways, better lit subways, proper walking and cycle links, so Stourbridge can reach its full potential, unshackled by the ring road. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tromans. I'm polishing my boots in readiness for the penalty shootout in August, so I look forward to that. Councillor Kieran Casey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, I was originally going to get up and speak in favour of the Lib Dem amendment, actually, so not entirely sure why that's been withdrawn, if I'm being honest, but I think it raised a couple of really important points that I still want to pick up on and that Councillor Priest has already touched upon. Firstly, the issue on employment land, I think, is a really important one. I think as a borough, we've got to make sure that we do have the land needed so that existing businesses can grow, they can expand and continue to take on more people. And so we can also get that investment from outside the borough as well into Dudley. Secondly, I think for me, and this is something I've raised many, many times in this chamber, and Councillor Harley's probably fed up of me asking this question, but it's around that issue of infrastructure. And I think this is something where, in reality, we still do not take this seriously enough at all. Infrastructure does not, in my opinion, continue to keep up with the pace of development. And I think that really does need to be a central part of this sort of work that's going to be done on this plan. And I know the leader and officers of the council will say time and time again, all that work's done, and that's obviously a consideration. But for me personally, I do not believe that it currently, the infrastructure considerations and the mitigations that we need to put in place for some of these developments keep up to pace with everything that's going on. So I'd like to ask the leader again for his assurance that that will be central, a central part of the thinking for this plan, and the importance of that sort of infrastructure discussion and being serious about that. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Kieran. I call upon Councillor Phil Atkins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This represents a significant victory for both the residents of Kings Winford and Wall Heath, and actually all the residents across the borough. And for many years, local people and people in my ward have sought firm assurance that our precious greenbelt would not be sacrificed to inappropriate development. And in fact, anybody that's been around more than a couple of years will know that the number of town hall meetings we had with hundreds and hundreds of people attend, this is not a new issue that's appeared overnight. And today we can say clearly that the proposed greenbelt sites in my ward, Kings Winford and Wall Heath, have been removed from the plan. But this did not happen by accident. It's a result of sustained campaigning, strong representations from residents, and a clear commitment from us to protect the character of our communities. Got to remember that our greenbelt is more than a line on a map, and it protects our areas from urban sprawl, preserves the identity of our area, and safeguards open land for future generations. Residents asked us to stand up for Kings Winford and Wall Heath. Let them know tonight that we listened, we acted, and this plan delivers the reassurance they have worked so many years to receive. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Phil. And I call upon Councillor Simon Phipps.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, if I could make some comments to address some of the points raised by colleagues. Councillor Ali, with regards to Cavendish House, it was really good to see that we've had planning permission granted for the private developer on the main Portersfield site. A nice positive update for you is that we are exploring with Homes England about getting further assistance to compile more of the sites around there and get a more viable scheme that will help to enhance an overall development that meets all of the needs that that area of the town needs. And I'll be delighted, along with all the local residents, if we can get something built there so people arriving at the bus station and the metro will be greeted by a nice new development which is fit for the town. With regards to employment land, I will come back to that a little bit later on. But firstly, before that, with regard to Stourbridge, I hope that the report that will be coming up to Cabinet with regards to the Stourbridge Master Plan, as it has been known previously, and the public realm and highways improvements around there will be of interest to you. And hopefully that will be something that, if you need any further information on, we can discuss positively in the future. When it comes to the local plan itself, I have to personally thank the extremely hard-working officers, Vicky Popperwell and her team, that have managed to deliver a local plan under the most difficult of circumstances. I don't think there is anywhere in the country that has had to go through similar circumstances to what we have in Dudley when it comes to preparing this local plan, whether it was through, I think, 3 different legislation changes, the withdrawal of Dudley participating in a joint plan, and then also our extremely hard-fought political wish that we keep Greenbelt out of this particular local plan. They have been able to deliver, and my personal thanks to them for working with me to be able to get that done. Also, a very quick shout out to the former head of planning, Carl Meller, who's no longer with the authority, but also helped to lead those efforts. And my thanks go out to him as well. On behalf of Halesowen, where I'm privileged to be a local councillor for, I would like to thank the Save Halesowen Countryside group and their leaders, Mick and Carol Freer, Tony Edgington, Roy Burgess, and all of those people that relentlessly wrote to elected members and officers over many years, whether it was the Black Country Plan or the local plan, about the need to protect our green belt in Halesowen. And thanks to their hard work and thanks to the fact that as elected members we have listened to them, we have been able to achieve that outcome in this particular local plan. But as colleagues have said, that is a battle won, that is not the war won. The incoming changes to planning regulations in this country will take all of the power away from local authorities and it will hand it to unelected officials. Those unelected officials will soon be able to make decisions about large housing schemes without almost any local accountability whatsoever. This council passed a motion opposing that a few months ago, possibly a year ago, but the government continues. And when it comes to preparing the new local plan, the government will be forcing us to do so immediately, without waiting the usual 5 years in order to prepare a new plan. As other councillors have mentioned, those housing targets that are being put on us will be impossible to deliver. There is no chance that a borough with the available land that Dudley has will be able to deliver those targets. Whether you build on every single piece of brownfield land in the borough or not, those targets are unachievable. But the target persists because we are taking up the housing shortfall from other areas like Birmingham, because the targets have been shifted away from inner cities and towards boroughs like Dudley. And when it comes to employment land, those targets are still to be met. Whilst the inspector has not found the plan unsound because of employment land, we still are hugely below on that target. And if we built on every single brownfield land, we would not be able to achieve that. So all of this chamber needs to unite as we prepare the new local plan, because there are many battles to come. And I hope that the whole chamber will get behind protecting the countryside that we enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phipps. I call upon Councillor Paul Bradley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to second, I think did my job, Councillor Phipps, with the amount of work that our officers have actually done the past few years. It has been an extraordinary time with different changes in legislation. But I would also like to push a thank you out to the volunteers of the borough who actually do some of the really hard work that's involved in these matters, like in Halesowen, like on the Triangle, like in Wollaston. For myself, it's the Corbett Meadow Action Group who have done very well. They organise themselves extremely well, and it just goes to show that volunteer groups can really make a difference when it's fought for. I'm delighted that the local green space designation is in this plan, this sound plan, and I look forward to having 3 years of having evidence to protect this piece of land, a very valuable piece of land. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Paul, and I think your comments with regard to the volunteers is extremely well made. Councillor Steve Edwards.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't really going to speak on it, but I'll just mention something quickly. It's fantastic, actually, that the green spaces, the green belt's being saved. One of the things always to notice for me is the green spaces. In our ward of Brockman and Pensnet, we ain't got green belt, we've got green spaces. There's been good work over the last few years, actually, with former Councillor Westwood and Councillor Greenway and stuff like that, saving the green spaces. But it's just looking at the protection of green spaces now to ensure that when we classify it as being protected, it don't just mean it's there to be used and abused in other ways. So how we look at protecting the green spaces as a whole, whether it's fencing them off and utilising them for green spaces rather than leaving them for dirt tracks as they are in Brockman and Pensnet at the minute for folks to ride about on motorbikes. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you very much, Steve. I call upon Councillor Sean Keesing.
More or less echoing everything that everyone said, and on behalf of myself and I'm sure Marco and Jason and James, welcome to my Reform colleagues to local plans. You're going to have such fun over the next 2, 3 or 4 years with the new plan we've got to have. I want to echo Councillor Phipps' comments and other comments that have been made. It is so important that local people and local groups have their voices heard, because they are the people that live in the areas that potentially could be lost forever. Now in Sedgley, I think there's only one area that could have been in a local plan, but right next to Sedgley and a lot on the north of the borough, there's a huge area of green space that could potentially be used to build on, which, even though it's not in Dudley Borough, could forever change the borough that we live in. And it's not just the houses, it is the roads, it's the schools, it's the doctors, it's all of the infrastructure that surrounds them. And we need to make sure that as Dudley, we formulate our own plan that not just protects Dudley within its boundaries, but also tries to protect areas that are adjacent to our borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Keesing. Just leading on from that point, it is an important piece of work for those new members. It's also an ageing piece of work. After all, Councillor Keesing is only 32 years of age. There are no further speakers, so I'll call upon the very spring-like Councillor Patrick Harley to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and answer as many of the points that were raised. First of all, on Portersfield, to Councillor Ali. The topography on Portersfield is really difficult, which is why it's taken so long for the developer to come forward with a plan that works. Now, any developer will want to make a profit. They won't build, whatever the development is, they will not build it if they're going to do it at a loss. And even with intervention, the topography there makes it a difficult site to develop, hence the delay. Now we've got something moving on there, and also on the Metro Bar, I'm assured that will be a social housing project, so that should be music to your ears. Obviously, the Metro and the bus station are Dudley Council projects. If they were, then heads would have rolled and we'd have probably made more movement on that than what has been done. You ask about infrastructure, a couple of members did. On the plan that we're passing tonight, that infrastructure, whether it be GP surgeries, additional school classrooms, etc., that is built into that. And as we develop the new local plan to take us to 2045, those plans and projects will also be in there, so we will look at that. When it comes to employment land, we're woefully short, but every authority in the West Midlands is. So that is going to be a difficult one to solve, because of course the more employment land we move on to housing, or we don't, then the threat of developing green spaces and green belt becomes more prominent. Now, Councillor Phipps touched on the new housing figures. They are incredibly ridiculous. And although Simon mentioned if we built on every bit of brownfield, we couldn't meet the numbers, a lot of the planning officers are also saying that if we build on every blade of green belt, we still wouldn't get near those figures. So this is the problem this authority and every other authority has. And we have a thing called duty to cooperate with other authorities to help them out. Well, they won't be able to help us out because most of the Black Country authorities have got the same problem. Those outside of the West Midlands, like Shropshire, Warwickshire, they have the same issues we have. So there will be nobody there to bail Dudley out with its housing numbers. Now, Councillor Lawrence alluded to this. We've won a big battle in getting this plan passed. There was a lot of opposition to it, from councillors and officers outside of Dudley who didn't want us to leave the Black Country Plan, but it is unfair that neighbouring Black Country authorities built on Dudley Greenbelt to satisfy their house numbers. We put that right. And now a couple of years later, we have our own local plan ready to be passed, I would imagine unanimously, here tonight. And if we hadn't have come out the Black Country Plan, diggers would have been on the triangle as we speak, without a shadow of a doubt. So a big shout out to the planning team. They have worked almost round the clock and tirelessly to get us what I think is record speed. And I'd like to thank the inspector who came from Bristol. She had a very tough reputation, but I think that she treated Dudley very fairly. And the final shout out, Mr. Mayor, is to the group, some represented upstairs. Shout out to Mick and Tony from Halso. We know Mick for many years. He was unofficially my Greenbelt guru when they first mooted the Black Country Plan. And then, of course, we have Steve and David, who I can see up in the balcony. You know, you guys have been absolutely fantastic. You really have. A petition against the Black Country Plan, Mr. Mayor, 20,000 signatures. Now, we as politicians in here dictate and formulate policy. They create the opinion, the groundswell of public opinion. And no politician in this chamber could have ignored 20,000 people in Kings Wingford signing letters and signing petitions. So well done to you, gents, and the rest of your team. And Mr. Mayor, proud moment, coming out the Black Country Plan, passing this local plan today, but we've won a battle to protect our green belt. We now face a real war in order to do the same from now until 2045. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Harley. There are no further speakers. Is that agreed? Is there anybody against? Thank you. Moving on to item 6, Audit Committee Annual Report. I know you've just sat down, Patrick, but I called upon the Leader of the Council.
Mr. Mayor, members of the Council, I move that the report be received and noted.
Is there a seconder?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any speakers on this item? There's none indicating, but I will give you a moment. No? Do you exercise your right to reply? Is that agreed? Thank you much. That is carried. I'll just give it a short moment just in case anybody from up in the gallery wishes to use the opportunity after the Dudley Plan to leave. I've seen the rest of the agenda, both the motions and the amendments, so you're more than willing to stop with us. Thank you very much. No, that's a positive sign. Item 7, appointments, nominations to other bodies. I call on the Leader of the Council.
Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the Council, I move that the recommendations in the report be approved and adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cathy Bayton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and don't wish to object or to any of the nominations made, but just to remind whoever is going to be making those decisions next year about the timely nature that they need to be made in, because this time we had to go through special dispensation through the Chief Exec and the Monitoring Officer, because some of those nominations are time limited and they have to be got in before the AGMs of the external bodies. So it's just making people a note really to people for next year, make sure they're done in time, please.
Thank you very much, Cathy. There are no further speakers on this. No. Do we require a vote on this, or are we quite happy to do it via consent? Does Council agree? Is there any dissent? That is clearly carried. Item 8, review of the Constitution. Again, I call upon the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the Council, I move that the recommendations in the report be approved and adopted.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder?
Formally seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any additional speakers on this item? No? Do you wish to exercise your right to reply?
From some members, there were a couple of concerns about the report. However, there's enough flexibility in there for members to review at the appropriate scrutiny committee or working group in order, if they want to make changes throughout the municipal year, they can do so.
Thank you very much for that very helpful clarification. Again, do we require a vote on this, or does the council agree? Is there any dissent? That is clearly carried. Item 9, political balance of the council. I call upon the leader of the council.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, members of the council, I move that the recommendations in the report be approved and adopted. Thank you.
Is that seconded?
Seconded, Mr Mayor.
And there are no speakers identifying, so again, I'll ask the leader if you wish to exercise. Right. Again, can I just ask, does the council agree? Is there any dissent? Then that is clearly carried. Moving on to item 10, notices of motion. Firstly, just before I move on to the, I think it's a matter for discussion in the groups, but it would be very, very helpful to the officers who are attempting to put the agenda together if we could try and reach an agreement specifically around amendments to motions. We've again found ourselves in a position today where amendments are being received and amendments to amendments are being received less than an hour before full council meeting. And it's, to be perfectly honest, I think it's very unfair to expect Steve to be able to then link in with the monitoring officer and the mayor of the council before we find ourselves. We can't instruct, but please, if you could take that back to your groups to have the discussion, I would be most grateful. Can I remind members that in usual circumstances, the maximum time allowed to deal with notices of motions is 30 minutes. How I believe on this occasion, Councillor Sean Kesey wishes to, I believe, move a suspension of council procedure rules. Councillor Kesey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that under Council Procedure Rule 22.1, the time limit of 30 minutes referred to in Council Procedure Rule 12.5 be suspended to enable all the notices of motion as listed on the agenda to be considered at this meeting of the Council, and that all contributions during this part of the agenda be limited to 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kesey. Is that seconded?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Take your pick. I believe Councillor Luke Hamlet wants to speak. Sorry.
To suspend that.
Yeah, I think we just need to have a decision on the agreement to suspend, and then we'll be with you shortly, hopefully. And hopefully we move on that pace throughout the motions. I would be most grateful. Does the council agree? Thank you very much. Building sustainable social homes and stronger communities. Is that yourself, Councillor Hamlet, or call upon Luke?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Across our country, we're facing a housing crisis that has been decades in the making. It is a crisis that affects every generation and every community, and Dudley is no exception. Every one of us will have spoken to residents struggling to find a decent, affordable home. Young people unable to get onto the housing ladder. Families trapped in overcrowded accommodation. Older residents who want to downsize but nowhere suitable to move. Working people who simply cannot afford rising private rents. Here in Dudley, the council's housing waiting list stood at 4,668 applicants in November last year. Is that better? Yeah. But we all know that that figure tells only part of the story. Many residents never join the waiting list because they've lost faith they will ever get a property. As Liberal Democrats, we believe everyone deserves a safe, secure and generally affordable home. We also believe that building homes should never come at the expense of the communities people value or the environment we are proud to protect. We welcome the government's ambition to increase housing supply. However, building more homes is only part of the answer. Those homes must be built in the right places, supported by the right infrastructure and designed to create thriving, sustainable communities rather than isolated housing estates. That is why this motion reinforces our commitment to a genuine brownfield first approach. Dudley Council is already reviewing disused garage sites across the borough, with 39 sites identified and 12 currently proposed for disposal. Rather than allowing these sites to remain unused, we should be working proactively with housing associations and developers to transform suitable brownfield land into much-needed social housing, following successful examples elsewhere, including Walsall. At the same time, we must continue to protect our green belt and value community open spaces through the Dudley Local Plan. This motion also recognises something we hear time and again from residents. When new social housing is built, local people want confidence that those with genuine local connections have a fair opportunity to benefit. This is why we are proposing local letting policies for communities such as Cradley, Wollaston and Criebank, with the potential to extend this approach across other parts of the borough. Whether someone has lived locally, works in the area, has children attending local schools, or provides care for a family member nearby, those strong community ties matter. This is not about excluding anyone, it's about strengthening community by helping people remain close to their families, support networks, schools and workplaces. We are also asking the Council to look beyond traditional models of house delivery by embracing community-led housing. Projects such as the Stourbridge Powerhouse demonstrate how local people can play an active role in creating affordable, sustainable homes that genuinely reflect the needs of the communities. By adopting a community-led housing policy...
That is time, Luke.
Oh, is that time? Yeah, so. Oh, is it 3 minutes? Looking at that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, just on that point, we've checked the technology. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to amend it from 5 minutes down to 3 minutes. So please bear with me when my dulcet tones will come in when you have 2 minutes late, because 2 minutes left, because that means you've utilised your 3 minutes. But thank you very much, Luke. Is that seconded?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I'll speak now if that's okay with you. Councillor Hamlet is absolutely right. We have to do more to tackle the housing crisis this country faces. 132,000 households in temporary accommodation, including 172,000 children and over 4,500 people on Dudley's housing waiting list. We all know that that doesn't show the full scale of the problem. That figure doesn't include people stuck in an overcrowded home or paying unaffordable private rent or living with damp and mould, people who are staying somewhere unsuitable because, as Lucas said, they just don't see the point of getting on the waiting list. And the truth is simple: we need to drive down bills, improve living standards, and most importantly, build more social homes. The single most impactful thing that this government could do to end this generational crisis is give councils the funding they need to build housing once again. We need to build homes in the right places for the communities that need them, and build the communities around them so that people actually want to live there. And that's why our proposal for a local lettings policy is so important, so that when social housing is built, whether from Cradley to Coseley and everywhere in between, local people have a fair shot of living there. And to be clear, local people should mean people who already live or work in the area, whose children attend a local school, or people who need to remain nearby to care for a relative. Too often, people are forced away from their support networks because the home that they need is not available locally. And a local lettings policy could help people remain close to family and keep children settled in their schools. The motion that Councillor Hamlet has brought forward tonight is also about the ownership model we're building. There is real promise in community-led housing. Projects like the Stourbridge Powerhouse show what happens when local people are given the chance to shape development for themselves. Adopting a clear community-led housing policy would help local groups understand what support is available, how they can work with the council, and how suitable sites can be brought forwards. Too often, councils up and down the country are in a paternal relationship with residents. They treat residents like they fear and reject all development, but community-led housing proves that is not the case. People want to see development, but they want their stake and their input in the community. People want homes that are warm, affordable, secure, and built with the needs of the people they are built in. This motion does that. It empowers residents, and I hope it can receive support from across the chamber tonight.
Thank you very much, Councillor Priest. I now call upon Councillor Jackie Cowell, who I believe has got an amendment, who will be moving an amendment at the conclusion of her speech. Jackie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will be moving the amendment, and for your information, Councillor Elaine Taylor will be seconding. Surely no one in this chamber can have any doubts about the merits of building sustainable homes and stronger communities. This amendment aims to strengthen the motion by focusing on credible asks of this authority in relation to that aspiration, whilst removing those requirements that will clearly have a detrimental and no doubt unintended consequence for those on the waiting list, and indeed risk creating unsustainable communities. I appreciate the dialogue with the lead member in developing our final response. There were two critical issues with the original motion. Firstly, the idea of trying to prioritise those living or working close to new developments, etc. This would make a complex allocation system even more complicated and very unfair. We shouldn't be saying to someone who doesn't happen to have the benefit of a new development nearby that you can't benefit from such developments. Supporting the embryonic community-led sector is a good thing, but setting targets at this stage could be counterproductive and result in unallocated land not being built out due to lack of demand or lack of approved community capability. Instead, it would be better to encourage stronger communication with and support for the sector, at least until it has the resilience to regularly and consistently deliver across the borough. By encouraging closer working with those on the ground across our communities, we can identify windfall sites sooner and ensure that we prioritise the delivery of social or affordable housing where appropriate to do so. Within the restrictions of the procurement regulations, the HRA and General Fund capital funding, the Council is best placed to bring together local builders, housing associations and council-led and community-led organisations to further the housing delivery potential of Dudley Borough by bringing sites to the attention of those smaller developers and community-based initiatives, even when it is not taking on responsibility for the management of the homes so delivered. A regular concern expressed by our communities is the loss of council stock. A thorough review of the disposal strategy should look to be clear on what the council actually considers when it talks about void disposal. It would help decision making if transparency was increased, and it would make better community buying of the process that sometimes will be will sometimes be necessary but must be justifiable. Sorry, Mr Mayor, I'm trying to cut my speech short. Mr Mayor, I move.
Thank you very much, Jackie. And with 5 seconds left, I was perfectly timed. Just before we ask for a seconder for that, I have been advised by the monitoring officer that there's a concern with regard to one word within the amendment. So I've asked for clarification to see whether the mover would accept that amendment before I make a ruling, I suspect, on whether to accept or not.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a point of clarification. In terms of the proposed amendment, the wording reads, the council resolves to recommend that Cabinet agrees to, and the wording is set out as printed. It is a point for Cabinet to consider, rather than full council dictate to Cabinet as to what should be agreed. So therefore, I'm proposing, with the agreement of Councillor Cowell, that the wording agrees is removed and replaced with the wording of considers.
I thought that was your advice, but perhaps I got that wrong. So, yeah, if that's a correction. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jackie. We just wanted to get that onto the record, so thank you very much for that. Is that amendment seconded?
Formally seconded, Mr Mayor.
Thank you so much, Elaine. The debate is now on the amendment as moved by Jackie Cowell. If there's any people indicated to speak on the main motion, please remove, and now is the opportunity to indicate if you wish to speak on the amendment moved by Councillor Jackie Cowell. Councillor Ryan Priest.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It feels like a lifetime ago that we saw your progressive, people-powered politics as the leader of the Labour group. A new era really is upon us. Meeting 1, a deal to keep the Conservatives in power. Meeting 2 refuses to thank volunteer groups in the borough for their hard work. And now meeting 3 guts a motion designed to empower residents in the future of their communities. The Conservative group must wonder what good deeds they've done in a past life to deserve such luck. With opponents like these, who needs friends? Perhaps most disappointing is that there are parts of this amendment which we could have accepted. A review of empty homes is entirely sensible. Looking at the void spending cap is entirely sensible. But pig-headed party politics has blocked any cross-party working. And as a result, they've produced an amendment which I'm shocked was even allowed on the agenda. We are now in the bizarre position where we're debating an amendment to a motion on community housing and a local lettings policy, and the amendment removes both proposals altogether. It is utterly bizarre. And even worse, in their attempts to stop this council achieving something which will benefit residents in this borough, they throw their own party under the bus. Because the one thing that the Labour Party got right in their leadership of Birmingham before the Liberal Democrats took over was their work on community housing projects. Now we have Dudley Labour opposing the same schemes that Birmingham Labour have already proved successful. The Labour amendment removes all mention of protecting our green belt and green spaces. It narrows the search for land to council-owned only. It removes the empowerment of local communities to develop housing. And it continues a free-for-all lettings policy that ships people all over the borough. In case you were wondering, I'm going to be opposing this tonight, and I hope you all do as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Priest. Councillor Ian Bevan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Before I begin, I would like to thank Councillor Cowell for the considerable thought, hard work and constructive engagement she has put into this amendment. We have had a number of positive discussions on these issues, and I believe that that engagement has resulted in a much more balanced and responsible proposal. I am pleased to support the amendment because, unlike the substantive motion, it does not seek to predetermine policy outcomes. Instead, it recommends that Cabinet considers these matters and allows recommendations to come back through the appropriate governance process before decisions are taken. That may seem a small drafting change, but it is an important one. It respects the Council's decision-making process and ensures that any future proposals are properly informed by evidence, officer advice, legal and financial considerations before decisions are made. In truth, much of this work is already underway. Officers are already developing asset management and investment plans for both our housing stock and our wider corporate estate. That work is being informed by extensive stock condition surveys and ongoing surveying across our high-rise, medium-rise, low-rise and sheltered housing stock. These strategies will inform future decisions on investment, regeneration, redevelopment and the long-term future of our housing assets. The amendment complements that work rather than cutting across it. I particularly welcome the focus on making better use of council-owned land, reviewing our approach to disposals, bringing empty homes back into use, looking at regeneration opportunities, and ensuring we maximise external funding wherever possible. However, it is important to recognise that good asset management is not simply about retaining every property. Every social landlord, where appropriate, disposes of homes that are no longer economically viable or capable of meeting modern housing standards. The objective should not be simply fewer disposals, it should be better decisions. decisions that maximise long-term housing capacity, improve the quality of our housing stock and represent the best value for the housing revenue account. Finally, I welcome the proposal for progress to come back through housing and asset scrutiny before being reported to Council. That allows members to challenge, test and shape proposals before Cabinet is asked to make decisions. Mr Mayor, one of the things that I've learned since taking on this portfolio is that housing is not a single policy, it is a whole system. This amendment recognises the wider strategic picture, it complements the work already underway, strengthens it through proper governance and avoids committing the Council to untested policy positions. For those reasons, I'm very happy to support the amendment.
Thank you very much. Only 10 seconds over, but you're in your stride, so hopefully you recognise I allowed you to continue. You may also have noted that we now have the 3-minute timer working effectively, which saves me from having to keep a very close eye. I call upon Councillor Andrew Tromans.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And to quote a long-serving former member of this chamber, I wasn't going to speak on this. First of all, I want to thank Councillor Bevan for reaching out ahead of this evening to engage in constructive dialogue about the motion. We weren't able to reach a consensus, but I appreciate the courtesy and I look forward to working with him and his colleagues for the allocation review. That courtesy was not extended to our group by the Labour group. And I wonder if just some of their objections to this motion is not the substance, but the messenger and the people that wrote it. And a quick line on the people who contributed to this motion. It wasn't just Councillor Khan, Councillor Hablett, Councillor Priest and myself. It was also Eddie Morton in his role at One Much. This is a motion very much that it is non-party political in many respects. So much so, the local lettings policies have been adopted by authorities in different political control across the country. Many Labour authorities have them, the Labour-controlled ones, or previously in the case of Newcastle City Council. But certainly Leeds does. The former Mayor of Bristol, Marvin Rees, led on this, particularly for the Bonington site in Lockleys. And crucially, Conservative councils have adopted a local lettings policy. Our neighbours over the border in Walsall have one. And I think as a point of clarification, there seems to be an attempt to augment this motion and make it seem as if it's somehow about shutting people out or not giving fair access. I think the wording of it was quite clear, that it suggested that something like 50% of any new social homes in a given ward are reserved people with a strong connection to that area. So I'll close my remarks there with a minute to spare, but I do suggest that the remaining members of the Labour group get themselves down to Katie Fitzgerald's for some education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tromans. I call upon Councillor Shaukat Ali.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a bit rich from the Liberal Democrats giving us lectures when we know the last couple of years they've been supporting the Conservatives with their budget, and now for them to come and tell us that we're in somehow some partnership with Conservatives. We are not in partnership with anyone. We will hold them to account on every occasion, at every opportunity. Similarly, the Reform Party and similarly yourselves. As far as the amendments is concerned, I fully support Councillor Cowell's amendment because it strengthens commitment to delivering social affordable housing. And it also says that the ward councillors and residents are at the heart of this because they know when sites are derelict or unused. So that process can be started right early on before it comes to some formal process. The amendment also calls for a transparent review of council-owned land, a priority for using that land to deliver affordable and social housing. And more importantly, the partnership with local builders, housing associations, and community-led organisations to bring forward the smaller schemes, because many of the developers look for 300 units, bigger developers, but the local developers, local builders, I mean, this is about keeping the local pound within the borough, supporting the local economy. And this amendment also recognises the importance of protecting and expanding our existing stock. It's also about reviewing the sale of council homes, which we know over the recent years we've had quite a large number of council houses being disposed of, and re-examining the voids cap as well, because that is, I think, not maybe appropriate at this day and time. And also bringing back important homes into use. So overall, this amendment is more strategic. It does need the support of everyone so that it can go back for the Cabinet to consider, and then for us to kind of scrutinise if we need to, whether that's in the Cabinet or whether it's in the actual scrutiny meetings. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that's a competent motion to move. I've got two speakers indicating on that, but the question, the request is that the question now be put. Is that seconded?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Steve, can we move to a vote on that once the system is being set up? So all those in favour of the amendment now being put, please vote yes. If you would prefer the debate to continue, please vote no, and you have the right to abstain. Thank you. Has everybody had the opportunity to vote? Thank you very much, Council. The debate continues. Councillor Steve Edwards.
Yes.
Probably because you know what you're going to say, Steve, isn't it? Steve.
For me, quickly, obviously on the motion, but it was coming back to Ian's reply, saying about obviously sometimes social landlords have to sell off properties and housing, which I completely understand. I think the problem we've had in Dudley is who the houses have been sold off to and what the repercussion that is on the social value of the house. So we've ended up with houses that have got a council rent of 500 quid, and within a few weeks they've got a corporate landlord or a landlord's rent of 1,000, 1,200 quid. So it's how we ensure that if we are selling on any form of social housing, it's going to social housing providers again, rather than just to any Tom, Dick and Harry from up north who's making a big profit on it.
Thank you very much, Steve. Councillor Asif Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Hamlet for putting forward the original motion. I think he was done with good intentions. It's just a shame that his colleagues tried to politicise this. I think what we've done is, or what we've seen is, over the years, the Lib Dems have spoken a lot about cross-party work and engagement. This is a perfect example of that. We've put forward a motion, and there's been sufficient communication with the Conservatives to try to bring forward a motion which is more or better well-rounded, and it's for the benefit of the people of Dudley. What we've done, like I said, is a good example of cross-party engagement, and just a message from Dudley Labour. We're willing to work with any party if it's for the benefit of Dudley. And again, just to clear up one point, what we've done is cross-party engagement and work. What the Lib Dems have been doing over the last few years is a coalition. Massive difference between the two relationships. And it's just a shame that the moment things aren't going in the way of the Lib Dems, they are throwing their toys out of the pram. I'm hoping, it's not in my nature to make comments of this nature, but I'm hoping that we can start moving forward, because prior to the May elections, I was a little concerned as to how things would be in this chamber. So far, they've been quite good. We've been working well and closely with all parties all round, and hopefully we can continue with that manner. And just to finish off, I think the motion or the amendment put forward by my colleague, Councillor Cowell, is better. It's a better version than what was initially suggested, and it speaks very highly the fact that the Conservative cabinet member also has recommended and acknowledged that is a much better motion as well, because, as you know, they don't hesitate in terms of punching back or throwing things at us if they don't agree with us. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Asif. I call upon Councillor Marco Lungi.
Point of clarification, really, Mr. Mayor. We seem to have a spat here between Labour and Lib Dems going on, and the Tories kind of playing with that position. A lot is being said about there being cross-party working. I can assure you, Mr. Mayor, Reform UK has not received any request for engagement in relation to this matter. So I'm not sure about where that cross-party working has come from, but we will be voting today on what we believe is right, exclusive of any politics being played out tonight.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lungi. I'm sure that is duly noted. There are no further speakers on the amendment, so I'll call upon Councillor Luke Hamblett to exercise his right of reply. You're quite happy for us to move to the vote on that. So we're going to move to a vote on the amendment. It's been suggested both by the ruling group and indeed the main opposition that we have a named vote on that. Before I move that to the vote, can I just see whether that is agreed? Is there anybody opposed to that? Okay, thank you. So as soon as the technology allows, Steve, we'll be voting for a vote on the amendment as proposed by Jackie Cowell. All those in favour vote yes. All those opposed vote no. And if you wish to abstain, abstain. Okay, so that amendment is clearly carried. This will now be incorporated into the original motion and becomes the substantive motion upon which there can be further debate. And on that point, I call upon Councillor Marco Lungi, who I understand will be moving a further amendment. The text of the amendment has been circulated around the council. Many thanks, Councillor Lungi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know I'm on a short leash with regards to time, being restricted now only to 3 minutes. I'd like to quickly welcome Councillor, I believe it's Councillor Troman's amendment, well, no, motion, sorry, but it was Councillor Hamblett that introduced it, so thank you both. I'm not sure which one is to be thanked here, so I'll do both. Reform supports affordable homes for local people, with the emphasis, Mr. Mayor, on local. We support regenerating derelict land, and we support protecting Dudley's green belt. And this is precisely why we've tabled this particular amendment. For years, the Conservative administration has told residents that Dudley is a brownfield first authority. And yes, when I was a Conservative Member of Parliament, I uttered those very words many a time, although clearly planning decisions were delegated to the Council, not to the Member of Parliament. But if it's truly the case that we are a brownfield authority now, then our amendment should present no difficulty whatsoever. It simply asks the Council to demonstrate publicly every year that brownfield first approach has been put into practice. Members will know that planning decisions don't always end in this chamber. Developers appeal, and those appeals are determined by independent planning inspectors. And those inspectors examine evidence. They check whether the council has consistently applied its own policies. And in that respect, they look also at alternatives. What they don't do is determine appeals on the basis of political speeches or press releases. The stronger the council's evidence base, and I come back to Councillor Phipps's point about fighting future battles and wars, the stronger its position will be when defending decisions that protect our green belt. Our amendment strengthens that evidence base and it strengthens the transparency and accountability. If the Conservative administration is already doing everything it says it is doing, then this amendment simply gives residents the opportunity to see that for themselves. So I asked the leader directly, especially as his cabinet member isn't here, if your administration genuinely believes in brownfield first, what possible objection can there be to be publishing the evidence that demonstrates it, especially when it can be used to defend its case with appeal inspectors? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lungi. Is that amendment seconded?
Seconded, Mr Mayor, in a few words, if that's okay. I support this amendment because I believe it strengthens what is already a worthwhile motion as amended. We all agree that we need more affordable and social housing, but we also have a responsibility to ensure that development takes place in the right locations and that residents can clearly see how those decisions are being made. This amendment doesn't change the Council's brownfield first approach. It simply asks for greater transparency and accountability by providing an annual report showing how the policy is being delivered in practice. It asks sensible questions: how much brownfield land has been brought forward, how much capacity remains, what are we doing to bring empty houses back into use, are we making better use of vacant upper floors in our town centres, and importantly, are we ensuring that new housing is supported by the roads, schools, GP surgeries, parking and public transport that communities need. Finally, it ensures we continue to demonstrate how prioritising previously developed land helps protect one of our borough's greatest assets, our green belt. This amendment is about good planning, openness and giving residents confidence that the Council is delivering on the commitments it's made. And I do acknowledge that Councillor Bevan is in the chamber. I think Marco just got a bit mistaken there. But thank you, Mr Mayor.
Absolute pleasure. Call upon Councillor Simon Phipps.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just purely wanted to say very quickly that the requests that have been put forward for the information that is published, whilst I think the majority of some of this will be dealt with through a local plan process anyway, I am of the opinion that none of this could be used when it comes to defending the Council's position on individual planning applications should an appeal be made. These things that are listed down here, in my opinion, would not be something that is taken into account. It would be the individual cases for and against that particular application, and also performance with regards to the existing local plan, which again is reported on anyway. So I don't personally feel that would make any difference as the way it's been intended. But
thank you very much, Councillor Phipps. Councillor Ryan Priest.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. It will just be a quick one from me, just to say that my group will support this amendment. I think, unlike the previous amendment, it is within the spirit of the original motion and expands on it. And as the references to the Greenbelt have been removed from the original motion, I think reiterating that brownfield first policy just puts some of the strength back in that we originally had in there. The only hesitation I do have, though support it hesitantly, is around the redevelopment of upper floors above commercial premises, and more of just a plea to the administration. I think there's been enough good pubs lost because the upstairs and nearby buildings have been turned into apartments. I know that's a wider national legislation problem, but anything that a local authority can do to do this kind of redevelopment that we do need, but protect our fantastic community venues, is much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Councillor Priest. Before I move to the next speaker, who's going to be Councillor Patrick Harley, I've been notified by the monitoring officer again for a consideration for the move of the motion with regard to the wording before I reach a judgment. So, Aftab, do you want to outline?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just again, making the same point that I made to Councillor Cowell in terms of the functions of full council, in terms of dictating to cabinet itself. So the present wording sets out council further resolves that cabinet shall publish an annual report. It is for full council to make recommendations to Cabinet. So the word shall should be replaced with the word considers. If that is permissible to Councillor Longy, that is moved the original motion.
Thank you very much. I'll ask with the
In earlier this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, I mean, I really appreciate that, Mark. Again, it goes back to the recommendation I made right at the outset. Officers have been working tirelessly all afternoon in order to try and get the motions through now. And I'm sure that was an oversight that simply got to. So I absolutely appreciate, Marco, the time that you sent through. And again, if we can go back to group to ensure that we can ensure that the amendments are done in a timely manner in order for officers to give it the time that it quite rightly deserves. Thank you very much again, Marco. Patrick Harling.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, let's just read that first paragraph. Council further resolves that Cabinet shall publish an annual report to full Council demonstrating how the Council's adopted brownfield first approach has been implemented in practice. Well, I thought we'd done that earlier tonight with the local plan that gives us some protection now until 2029, 2030. This is smoke and mirrors. It's the leader of the opposition showboating. There is not, as Councillor Phipps has said, there is nothing in there that strengthens our hand at all. And the inspectorate, she was tough who handled our local plan. A couple of other councils had asked for judicial reviews on some of her decisions. So she was fair to us. You implement this, they will not take any notice of this whatsoever. This is all smoke and mirrors. And the hypocrisy of it and the amusement of it, Mr Mayor, is that this is put forward by someone who sat on Walsall Council for over 20 years, serving under the leadership, admittedly a Conservative leader, Mike Bird, who when they were preparing the local plan, the Black Country plan, and then Walsall's own local plan, when I dismantled it, put in more green belt than any other local authority, not just in the Black Country, but across the West Midlands. When you've actually had a fight to save the green belt and green spaces, come and talk to us. Until then, get on that boat back to Walsall.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harley. Councillor Ian Bevan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a couple of points of housekeeping. I am here and I do intend to repay the 10 seconds that I overspent earlier. I also cannot support Councillor Longy's amendment. I do understand the intention behind it. Monitoring the use of brownfield land, understanding housing capacity and considering empty properties and infrastructure are all legitimate matters. However, much of what the amendment requests already forms part of existing planning, housing and asset management work. My concern is that it creates another annual reporting requirement to full council across several different portfolios without clearly demonstrating how that will improve housing delivery or decision making. These issues sit across planning, regeneration, highways, infrastructure and housing. I understand they are already considered through established governance and reporting arrangements. I would rather see officer time focused on bringing forward viable sites, improving our housing stock and delivering homes, rather than creating additional reporting processes which may simply duplicate work already taken place. Where further assurance is required, that should come through the appropriate cabinet, scrutiny and planning governance arrangements. For these reasons, I cannot support the amendment. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Asif Ahmed.
Just a quick one from me. I agree with the comments just made by Councillor Bevan. We should be focusing on streamlining the process for the council, making things easier, and for there to be less reports and less admin work. We've all shown our commitment to protecting the green belt probably about half an hour ago. There's no doubts there. It was a unanimous vote, and I think we should just move on. And again, I appreciate the intentions of the reform group with this amendment, but it's just repetition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We shall move on because there are no further speakers on this. I ask Councillor Hamlet if he wishes to exercise his right of reply before we move to the vote. Okay, so we will put the amendment as put forward by Councillor Mark O'Lungy to the vote in the same principle. This will be a named vote. So all those in favour of the amendment as proposed by Mark O'Lungy indicate yes. If you oppose it, vote no. And if you wish to exercise your right to abstain, please do so. Exercised a yes, no or amendment.
I think Councillor Hanif, you've indicated to speak. You need to press the voting button.
Has everybody who wishes to vote voted? Okay, I can't read the Okay, so that amendment has been carried. We now move to the part where we consider the motion as amended by Jackie Cowell and amended by Councillor Mark O'Lungy. Are there any additional people who wish to exercise their right to speak? There is nobody indicating to speak, so I therefore call upon Councillor Hamlet to exercise his right of reply.
Still in voting mode. Oh, okay. Obviously, we've passed two amendments. The original purpose of our motion, I think, has sort of been lost with the removal of the relation to community. But in terms of the motion, there's enough in there for us to vote for it. So the Liberal Democrats will vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, we will move to the vote of all, and it'd be a named vote. All those in favour of the motion as amended, please vote yes. If you oppose it, please vote no. And if you wish to abstain, please indicate. That is clearly carried. Motion 10B, supporting families and opposing punitive school attendance fines. I call on Councillor Steve Edwards to move the motion as set out on the agenda. Whilst we wait for the mics to work, I believe Councillor Harley, whose mic is working, to say a few words.
Lynette and Damien Caulfield have just become grandparents, and after what they've been through in recent years, it's a boy.
Thank you very much. Could we please take that opportunity to place on record the applause by noting our thanks and congratulations to Damien and Lynette for becoming grandparents. Thank you, Councillor Harley. Councillor Steve Edwards.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Kassim will be seconding the motion. Holidays should be for enjoyment, rest and relaxation, but the current system brings nothing but stress for working class families. Dudley Borough has a below average earnings compared to the rest of England, meaning working class families are already struggling to make ends meet. Fines are also set at levels that only really impact the worst off in society. The system ensures working class families are either having to go into debt to go on holiday, risk unaffordable fines or face prosecution. But the truth of the fact is many are only left with one choice, which is not to have a holiday at all. Children and hard-working people being denied a chance of a holiday is something from Dickens' times, but here we are in 2026 talking about people going without. I have been contacted by family who have received fines for taking their children to family weddings and even funerals. We also have SEND families being fined for doing what is best for their children. I believe we need to go back to where it was. 10 days flexi holiday for children who have good attendance and are performing to the best of their ability and have good behaviour levels, with SEND families receiving special dispensation around how they are treated. To me, the motion seems like a no-brainer. Support working class families across Dudley by giving them the respect they deserve when making decisions for their own children, and also supporting the right to a family holiday. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Steve. And is that motion seconded?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a bit of a strange one because, as people will be aware, there's an amendment coming in that I'll be seconding later, but I do believe in Councillor Edwards' right to bring a motion forward, hence why I'm seconding it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And at that point, do you wish to move your amendment as laid out? I believe Sue Ridney wishes to move that. Sue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We don't argue with the motion as it stands that it is disproportionate on working class families, the cost of holidays. What I do bring before the council is that we, as a borough, have been recognised for not being at national attainment levels. And the only way that we can improve the attainment levels for the children in our borough is for those children to be in attendance at school. It's important that children attend school and that they learn and become better citizens. While I accept that the cost of holidays increases beyond most people's budgets for the holidays, it's still important that children are seen to have holiday time with their parents. But the important thing is that they need to be at school. They need to be in attendance, both for their learning experience and for their welfare and for their safeguarding. And I must say that having been a governor of a school since the mid-80s, I have the greatest respect for head teachers' professional judgment. And I do believe that the decision about whether children should have unauthorised or unauthorised absence lies in the hands of the head teachers of the schools. While I feel that you may want to take your children out on holiday, it is important that they attend school and attend for their learning. I want to say that we support that firms should be approached about the cost of holidays and why it has to increase so much during school holidays. It's just another time of the year. It's just August. It's not anything exceptional. So I believe that we are supporting attendance to improve the attainment and well-being of our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue. Is that amendment seconded?
Formally seconded, Mr. Mayor, and if I may speak. The reason I've brought this amendment forward, as was mentioned at the start of the meeting, is I've now spent 14, 15 years serving the next generation as a teacher and a senior leader in secondary schools. And I've always been with the principle that the way out of poverty is through education. And for me, the safest place and the best place for students, especially the students that I teach, they all say that they love my lessons and they don't want to go anywhere else. The best place for students is most definitely in the classroom, where we can improve their grades. One thing I will say is, and I understand the principle behind why we're debating this now, 10 days is a lot of school time that students will miss. And this isn't just 10 days at one point. We could have one student taking off 10 days, 2 weeks, and then another month, another 10 days, and students' gaps would be that big. Since COVID, we saw the impact of the gaps in students' knowledge because of this. And if we allow then students to take 10 days off here or there, the gaps become tenfold quite big and very hard to start closing. The other thing I will say is Dudley already has a low pass rate when it comes to GCSEs, which we are aware of. The DfE's data, when I was looking earlier, is if a child is considered persistently absent, which is 90% or lower, only 40% of those children pass their maths and English. So all we need is 10 days of family leave and then an illness of a week, and we're halving their chances of getting decent qualifications, good qualifications that allow them to achieve in the future. So that's why we brought this amendment in. I do firmly believe that the focus needs to be on why are the costs higher in the holidays rather than trying to get students out of the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the amendment has been proposed and seconded. The debate now moves on to the discussion around the amendment. So if people wish to speak on the main motion, feel free to remove yourselves and come back later. I call upon Councillor Ryan Priest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep this short again because I'm in this odd position where I agree with everything that was just said. And I promise you it's not for party political reasons, but I still feel the need to vote against it. The reason being that I think much of what is in the Labour amendment, and I think it is a good amendment, is largely addressed in the Lib Dem one, but that one goes further to address the cause of absences more generally outside of school holidays, and it's more from a procedural point. I don't know what happens if both of them pass in terms of the wording of the motion, so I'm going to vote against in the hope that it fails and the same thing happens with the Lib Dem one. Thank you.
Okay, just for clarification. Now, there's the first. Yes, so just for information, because I think it is a relevant point, the advice that I've received is there is no problem with both of those amendments being passed. It would obviously be work for the officers to do outside of the council chamber. But if this amendment passes, there would still be a requirement to listen and vote on the Liberal Democrat amendment, if that makes sense. Thank you. Councillor Wayne Little.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Edwards and Mughal, for the comments you just spoken about data there. It's really good to see that we've got such passion and people wanting to be heard on this topic, because it is about our children in Dudley and the best outcomes. So on that, we all agree. Standing here tonight, we'll having our little push and pulls about the way we go about that and what is heard and when. But at the heart of this is the best interests in our children. I stand to support the Labour side of it. As lead member for Children's Services, I'm accountable for the best outcomes for our children in line with law and regulations. They currently stand as law and regulations. So, but things in society, in our economy, in technology, things change over time. So the sentiment of wanting to address that, because these things have changed around what that legislation or law may have said and the intent of it when it was first published, really matters. And us as politicians, it is our job to raise those issues, to lobby local government, central government, and get those changes appropriately where they're needed. But as I say, data doesn't lie. And the cost of things, as a parent of 4 children, I can absolutely attest to that. And going on holidays, I have to be accountable for my actions in wanting to be a parent. And although we have all shared the same desire for our children, how we go about that and affecting that change probably differs in our politics and why we're on different sides of the chamber. So for me, in the amendment, it talks about existing powers to help reduce financial pressures. So for me, it is about empowering our young people to be able to work their way out of poverty, and parents. And that's done through tax incentives, and a range of other methods that would be more right-minded, conservative type approaches to doing that, rather than the direct intervention in using regulatory powers around business. Although I do think there's merit in both of those, why I think it's really good that the amendment has brought two of those together and called a hybrid approach. So I was doing lots of research around this, and although it's very polarised, people sit on one side or another, there's a consensus around that hybrid approach, which I'm really pleased to see evident within tonight's motion. I've got 24 seconds left. That's unusual for me, because I do normally like to talk a little bit more on that, but I'd just like to run it down to the very wire and say that's why on this side I fully support the amendment on there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Wayne. We've 5 seconds to spare, I believe. Councillor Adam Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to rise to support the amendment because I do think that it's a good one. I think that it improves the original motion and actually changes the approach of it, so we do value that education that our children in this borough experience. And I think it's just worth reflecting that working class kids didn't always have a free education. That was something that the working classes had to fight for. And as with anything else that becomes free, taxpayer funded, actually people can lose sight of the value of that. And if you look at families actually who can afford to take their kids on holiday, they also often pay for additional tuition as well, because they see the value in that tuition, time spent with a teacher for those children. So I couldn't support the original motion for that reason. The 10 days I found particularly troubling because that represents 5% of a school year. There's roughly 190 days that our children are meant to be in school. So 10 days out would mean a 5% reduction in their chances of success, of attainment. And of course, that doesn't just affect grades on a piece of paper. If they have gaps in their learning, it actually affects their chances for life. So I'm happy to support the amendment. And again, I just will acknowledge actually Councillor Edwards, where he came from, the intent with this, which is to acknowledge that working class kids might not have the same chances of holidays and things as others, but they have got, through the hard fight of hundreds of years ago, have that free education. So I think there's a real value in that. This motion amended protects that, and therefore I'm happy to support it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. I call upon Councillor Sean Kesey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Davis, for not talking the clock down to zero. That would have been a bit of an experience. Before I make my points, I'd just like to say to Councillor Harley that 2 years ago, he couldn't wait to slap Marco Longi's name on any notice of motion this council was trying to put forward. And if you're just going to keep attacking Marco personally every time you make a contribution, they're going to get very boring very quickly. Moving on to the motion itself, I will, and I believe the Reform Group will support this amendment because we believe it brings greater balance and common sense to the motion before us. There should never be a choice between supporting families and supporting education. We should be doing both. This amendment rightly recognises that family time, shared experiences and holidays can have real benefits for a child's well-being and development. At the same time, it also acknowledges an equally important truth that regular school attendance plays a vital role in educational achievement, safeguarding the future and life choices. I particularly welcome the emphasis on the professional judgment of head teachers. They know their pupils, they understand individual circumstances, and they are often best placed to determine when flexibility is appropriate. Councillor Bills will know that. She worked alongside my dad in Sandwell. Two great head teachers, I think. Butter you up. This amendment also moves the debate away from simply talking about fines and towards the wider issues that families face. The reality is that many parents are priced out of travelling during official school holidays because of significant increases in holiday costs. Looking at those wider market pressures is a sensible and constructive approach. Importantly, this amendment does not weaken the expectation that children should attend school. Instead, it seeks a more compassionate and proportionate national framework that recognises exceptional circumstances whilst maintaining high expectations for attendance. For those reasons, I believe this amendment strengthens the original motion, and although I will probably never have children myself, I was a child, got nieces and nephews. I remember my mum and dad struggling sometimes to pay for stuff when everything rocketed up in price in the school holidays. For that reason, I'm happy to support the amendment. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Sean. I call upon Councillor Shaukat Ali.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I just add that this issue was also debated in Parliament in 2025 as a result of an e-petition, I think, which over 180,000 people signed. So it's a very emotive issue, but we've heard how important it is in terms of school attendance. So in this debate, MPs from all parties recognise the sharp rise in holiday prices outside term time. However, when I browsed through that, it did say that no policy changes emerged, but as a result of that debate, I think there was an agreement to review all of the evidence people submitted as part of the petition to see how the process could be improved. So our motion, our amendment, I think also does that, calls on the government for a compassionate, family-centred national attendance framework, but also urges the government to use existing powers to help support families with the cost of living pressures. And therefore, I support our amendment. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ali. There are no further speakers on the amendment by Sue Ridney, so I ask Steve Edwards to exercise his right of reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thanks to Q as well for seconding that motion. It shows that Labour have had no hand in it this time. But yeah, I've got actually no disagreement with what's in the amendment. I've got a bit of a disagreement with what's been removed from the amendment. And I know 10 days, like Councillor Davis says, is a long time. But it's about putting a figure there to say, actually, let's have something. I mean, we're very lucky to have experienced teachers and head teachers in here. But I know that, you know, there is exceptional circumstances that head teachers can award or allow people to come out of school. But it just so happened no more. And actually, holidays is something that's on the red list that says we won't give it you just for term time holidays because they're cheap for families. One of the things I would say is actually the available evidence from, obviously I put this motion in a year ago, well, tried a year ago, and so we're finally here. So I've done a lot of research into it. And actually the evidence does show that there's any causational link between fines and a better education. I mean, as Q has pointed out, actually within Dudley, we've got a low GCSE pass rate already with the system as is. So to me, what's the problem with actually trying something different? It would be good actually to look at, which I haven't done, is what the pass rate was 20 years ago compared to what it is now, because we could have actually come up with some good figures. But you know, when we look at how it is, when it was introduced in 2004, the national average school attendance was 93.17%. 20 years later, it's 93.22%, so it's gone up a couple of halves of, 0 percentage points. So there's been no real effect from implementing fines to actually increasing attendance. So, it's about looking at that as a whole and how we can adjust family lives and get people, yes, having a much better education. The one thing that has come along with the fines in those years is actually the government have raked in £200 million, but attendance ain't actually moved up. It stayed exactly where it was. So, we can look at it in that way, but actually it's just another tax on holidays. And it does predominantly affect working class people because richer people or more wealthy people can absorb the holiday time the way it goes up. They can afford to pay them holiday things. So it's people from working class families who have got already low paid jobs who are either going to have to get prosecuted or they're going to have to get a fine, or they just ain't going to go on holiday. So that's why, for me, I will be disagreeing with the amendment, but I don't disagree with what's in it, it's what's been taken out.
Thank you very much, Steve. So as we move to the vote, which again, I'm going to take Council's consensus, will be a named vote. We'll be voting on the amendment as proposed by Councillor Sue Ridney. So all those in favour of the amendment vote yes. Those opposed vote no. And those who wish to abstain, please feel free to do so. Now that is clearly carried. So we are now... Oh, just give it a couple of minutes. It's clearly carried. So we now move on. That amendment becomes part of the substantive motion. I now call upon Councillor Ryan Priest. Before I do so, Hilary, is it a point of order or? Okay, so I'm going to move on to Councillor Ryan Priest, who I believe wishes to move an amendment at the end of his contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and you can second this if you like. It's up to you. First, I want to thank Councillor Edwards for bringing the motion to the council. I've got no issue with its central premise, and as I say, I had no issue with the premise of the Labour amendment too. It's not a hill I'd necessarily die on. Our amendment doesn't seek to distract from the original motion. It seeks to make stronger the wider reasons why children miss school and what this council can do about it. I won't go into the bit about the proposed days for leave, as I think that's been sorted by the last amendment. What we're hoping for is that this amendment can accept that absence is far more than planned holidays, and it asks the council to strengthen its preparations for the children not in school register to move more quickly when a pupil is permanently excluded, so that they are placed with a registered alternate provider without unnecessary delay, accepting that no child should disappear from the education system simply because the education system was too slow to respond. It also asks the council to examine the costs of widening free school meals and providing better access to mental health support. However, it doesn't ask council to commit to spending that money tonight. It asks officers to do the work so that councillors can make an informed decision through the proper budget process. We know that poverty, hunger, poor mental health all affect attendance. We cannot complain that children are missing school or refusing to look at the reasons why they are struggling to attend. The amendment also asks council to do the work with schools and community organisations to widen access to after-school sport, music, drama and art, so that schools are somewhere that children want and are excited to be. The amendment also looks at young carers, and it is not a criticism of this council to say that more work needs to be done to identify them. Young carers are notoriously difficult to find, and many do not even realise that the responsibilities that they carry make them a young carer. Schools need the right information and training to identify those pupils and support them. And I would hope that that work could lead to every school in the borough having a named young carers lead who understands what help is available. And finally, there is a practical step we can take, because parents are expected to know when a child is too unwell for school and when they are well enough to attend. But most parents are not doctors. The council, the NHS and schools should work together to provide clear and consistent guidance on when a child should remain at home and when they can safely return. Mr. Mayor, I can see the time's running out, but I'll end it there, Mr. Mayor.
You guys got to give a discretion of 5 or 10 seconds if you wanted to do a rousing conclusion. And then, okay. Is that amendment seconded? Mr. Thank you very much. We are now discussing the amendment as proposed by Councillor Priest. I call upon, I'll give you time to get to your seat, Councillor Wayne Little.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That look over there sort of gave away that I was the first to speak. So, thank you. Thank you again for this amendment to look the subject of our children. Again, it's got some great content within there. It really shows the knowledge and understanding of all those things that can contribute to making the best outcomes for our children here in Dudley, and the responsibility we've got about making those consistently good. However, although I agree with all of the things within there, I don't think that it strengthens the original motion from Councillor Edwards. The points made earlier about the timeliness of amendments coming and having the ability for us all to sit down. I managed to grab some time with the Director of Children's Services this afternoon and the Head of Education and the Attendance Officer, but I'm mindful that I had to draw them away from very important time in Dudley when we've got Ofsted here looking at the outcomes of our children at this time. So the timeliness is really important, and I hope that sort of brings it home as to the future amendments submitted are done in a timely way so we can have that pre-discussion to ensure we get the most out of them. Also on that, about timeliness, the work here, when we went through some of these, is, and I know this already, and Sue and Angela beginning to be involved in what's going on with our children's services, the family business in Dudley, as we call it, we'll know that these are already ongoing pieces of work. The schools reform, the holiday activities fund, all these are things that are already going on, and I don't think it will add any value to be adding something to an amendment to sort of bring information back to it. So on that most points alone, I wouldn't endorse and support this particular motion, although I do recognise the importance of the wording and sentiment within it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Wayne. Okay, I am going to give it a little time just in case there are any other additional speakers, because we've only had one speaker on that amendment, but there are no further speakers indicated, Councillor Harley, so I don't think we need to put that to the vote. I'll call upon Councillor Edwards to exercise his right of reply.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. It'll only be a quick one. Everything within the motion, I do completely agree with. Sorry, the amendment, I do completely agree with, if I'm honest. The scope of it is spread really wide. I mean, to paraphrase the monitoring officer, it's probably not within the scope of what I'm aiming for with the amendment. But because I don't disagree with anything that's in there, I agree in looking to the wider causes of stuff. I will personally be voting with it, but I'm presuming it won't pass anyway. But I just do believe and agree with everything that's within the amendment as well. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edwards. We will now be voting on the amendment as proposed by Councillor Ryan Priest. Those who support it vote yes. Those who oppose it, no. Those who wish to abstain, please do so. It's a named vote again. Oh, and in extra time, it was so that amendment is lost. We now move on. That's correct, yeah, 32 to 30. We now move on to the general discussion on the main motion as amended. Please indicate if you wish to speak. I'm going to take Councillor Hilary Bills, but ensure that Councillor Southall comes in because I recognise that he indicated in the first part of the debate. Hilary Bills.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Free education came in 1872. And yes, your father was great fun to work with, Councillor Kesey. He's a naughty boy. He wasn't listening, was he? I just said something very nice about your father. He was great fun to work with. Yeah. I think the council needs to come back to what this is about. It's about the legislation of 1997. And I was a head teacher at that time. And we also need to remember that we are the prosecutors. Dudley handed out 4,000 fines in 1 year. So we're talking about a really important issue here. And I want to explain that I never had an issue with it. Why did I not have an issue with it? Because it was introduced by the Labour government, because at that time, attendance in school was low. Our area was coming out of having those factories where granddad worked, your dad worked, your uncle worked. I come from one of those families. It was a Sentinel Wagon Works, Rolls-Royce in Shrewsbury. My whole life as a child was spent going to the wagon works, and we had the sports grounds and the Father Christmas, the whole thing. In the 1980s and those early 90s, they were wiped out. So when I went to my school in Wednesbury, in the playground in the morning, it was full of fathers bringing the children to school, not the mothers, because the fathers hadn't got jobs. They hadn't been able to carry on in what they thought they'd do. So the Labour government brought this in to encourage people. You've got to understand, education, education, education. Tony Blair said it. It was never intended to have anything to do with holidays. And for me, it was very easy because attendance was counted from the 1st of September to the 31st of May. I used to say to my parents, do what you like, I don't mind, but up until the 31st of May, full attendance, I will not support absence. After that, fill your boots. They could go on the cheaper holidays in June and July, but until then. So it was easy for me. I never, ever had an issue. Any family that wanted to go back to the Asian subcontinent for 6 weeks to go and see grandma, they could do it. It changed. If I was with a lot of teachers, with the name I'm about to say, when Michael Gove changed it, he made the school year the 1st of September to the 31st of August. And that's when the problem came, when parents wanted to go on holiday in term time. Now, I was, after the great fight we had, was contacted by one of my ex-pupils, and I have to say, we must write to the Secretary of State, because I think it's totally wrong that we criminalise parents who just want to take their kids on holiday.
Thank you very much, Hilary. I gave the same discretion of additional 5 or 6 seconds there in order to conclude. Call upon Councillor Andrew Southall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'd like to thank Councillor Steve Edwards for raising this. I did have an original speech for the original motion. I may have to rejig it, so please bear with me. But having spoken to local parents, I'm pleased that we've had this discussion today. Local people feel that the current state of affairs on this issue is deeply unfair to working families, a view that was unanimous among parents who I spoke to at a local school near Wollaston this afternoon. The role of government, in my view, is to protect the nation, keep law and order, ensure public safety, provide and maintain vital national infrastructure at reasonable cost, and otherwise facilitate the entrepreneurial spirit of the electorate, the freedom-loving Brits. The role of government is not to interfere in every waking moment of our daily lives, including telling you where and when you can take your children on holiday. The state should not have a monopoly on what individuals and families see is best for their children who are not the property of the state. I therefore supported the original premise of the motion. I will vote for it amended as a step in the right direction, but I would like to say thank you again for the idea, and I would support it again in future if it ever did come up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Southall. There are no further speakers, so I'll call upon Councillor Steve Edwards to exercise his right to reply.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah. Obviously, I'm going to vote for the amended motion. I do believe everything Hilary said was right, and thank you, Andrew, for his comments. It's about getting people speaking about this, and hopefully we will now get a letter going to government saying what the views of the people of Dudley are. And it is, you know, everybody's got the right best interest here at heart, is the interests of our children, and now they have good, happy lives. And, you know, the one thing to remember is all that, you know, Councillor Davis rightly pointed out about free education and when it came in and stuff, and also pointed out that it's not necessarily free, it's got to be paid for at some point. But the truth is, those children are the ones that are going to pay for their own education. So, yes, let's give them the best education to bring them out, but having a holiday and having time with their family and learning how to love and how to get on and how to build tents and everything about everything is good for them and good for them as people, and they will grow up being much happier people get jobs, and people who have got jobs pay taxes. So, you know, it's all a big roundabout where if we can work it in one circle and make sure that kids get the best of everything, then I think everybody will be much better off in society.
Thank you very much, Steve. We will now move to the vote. The motion proposed by Steve Edwards as appropriately amended through the debate. And again, we will have the choice to vote in favour, against or abstain. You may vote now. That is clearly carried. Okay. Moving on to 10C, tackling the illegal use of e-scooters. I call upon Councillor Tromans to move the motion as set out on the agenda. Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm pleased to confirm there are no amendments to this motion. I'm going to look around the room. No, that's good. Okay, and I'll crack on with my speech in just now. So, I think there are two types of motion, Mr. Mayor, that are heard in this chamber. There are motions which are devised to score political points, and there are motions that are put forward in good faith to try to address problems that face our communities. I should know, I've written both types. This motion focuses on tackling the nuisance and harm caused by e-scooters, and I would hope that it falls very much into the latter category. Indeed, it was prepared with the assistance of Stourbridge resident David Viner, who I hope is still here with us today, a name that will be familiar to some of you for his cross-party advocacy for a velodrome in our borough. I'm sorry to say that somebody close to Mr. Viner was knocked down by an e-scooter while walking along Market Street in Stourbridge whilst doing their shopping. That individual was hospitalised and is only just recovering from the injuries sustained. I'm sorry to say, Mr. Mayor, that is not an isolated incident. The latest government figures indicate that e-scooter casualties consistently exceed 1,400 per year, with nearly 500 people sustaining serious injuries and multiple fatalities reported annually. At this point, I should point out that it's actually illegal to ride a privately owned e-scooter anywhere they're on private land. That is, unless the e-scooter is part of an authorised rental scheme, such as the one operated by Lime in Birmingham. We have no such schemes in our borough. This motion calls for a multi-agency action to crack down on the illegal use of e-scooters so we can prevent more collisions like the one that occurred on Market Street. This is something that should already be happening in areas covered by public space protection orders, such as Stourbridge Town Centre, and do correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe such an order is in place in Dudley as well. I ask all members of this chamber to support this motion, and you'll be pleased to know that I'm finishing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrew, is that seconded?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, I will keep it short. I'm happy to second it. And just to say, just to preempt what I think is going to come from the administration here, but I do hope I'm wrong, is I accept that much of this motion is in the works or is in process or is about to take place. I accept that absolutely. What this motion does is just make note of that, make sure that it's borough-wide and recognises this problem, and particularly make sure that that partnership working is happening with the combined authority, with the police as well. We know that too often antisocial behaviour thrives, of all types antisocial behaviour thrives, when partnership working fails, and I think there is a need to get that right. I think particularly the bit of this motion that we're not seeing already action by the combined authority or by the council is that promotion about the fact that e-bikes actually are already illegal. I think if you were to do a straw poll of most people in the Dudley Borough, they wouldn't know that. They're quite happy to buy them for the kids. I do not think that every parent who buys an e-bike for their kid necessarily knows that the consequences of it, be that the antisocial behaviour that takes place in the parks, or even that they're not meant to be buying them in the first place. So if nothing else, I hope this can attract cross-party support for the promotion of that material alone, and I'll rest my case there.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Call upon Councillor Simon Phipps.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr Mayor, and thank you to the councillors for bringing forward the motion. It's a personal frustration of mine because I am an advocate for the use of e-scooters, particularly around city centres. I think when I've visited both Birmingham and Manchester, they've had e-scooter trials, and I think the schemes are broadly very well implemented and can be supported to make sure that they're done within reason. And I certainly have quite a bit of fun of them riding around Birmingham as well. So, you know, I can understand why people ride around on them. And it certainly makes it a hell of a lot easier to get to Conservative Party conference in the morning, I can say that. But when it comes to their use outside of those trial zones, we have seen, I have seen in particular, but everybody has seen it, so many instances, not just of e-scooters, but also yobbos riding around with balaclavas on the electric-powered bicycles. Sometimes they might have actual small petrol motors strapped to them. There's no registration number on these things. There's no real way of kind of tracking them, apart from the things that I think it's commendable my colleagues have done when it comes to introducing drones for council use to try and improve tracking, because we all know that in this day and age the police are not allowed to chase some of these people, because if they did and they knock them over, it's the police that's in trouble, not the idiots that are riding around without a helmet or any protective gear. So when it comes to the motion, I have no problem supporting it. I think when it comes to the controlling of the ASB, I would very much look forward to seeing our partners in the police being able to work well together with the council. When we're willing to provide ways of trying to track them down, then the police should work with us and be able to make progress. And I would certainly hope when it comes to the council's actions on this issue in the future, it won't just be limited to providing that evidence in terms of the footage from the bike, but that it goes towards making sure that if it's one of our tenants that is causing that ASB, then that tenant will receive the appropriate action. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for what goes on in your house. You have to take responsibility for what your kids are doing in public. And that falls down on the tenant, and it doesn't just fall down on the kids to have a slapped wrist. So I'm happy to support it, and I'd happily even go further.
Thank you very much. Are there anybody who wishes to speak? Councillor Patrick Harley.
Mayor, just a short one, just to complement what Simon just said. When we introduced the quite tough ASB policy earlier this year, we've also requested that the Director of Housing undertakes a review of the tenancy agreements as well. That should dovetail into the ASB policy, and unless it does, then, as Simon says, it's your household. You are responsible for everybody else who lives there. So this new tenancy agreement hopefully dovetails with the ASB policy and we get real action.
Thank you very much for that, very helpful. There are no further indicators to speak, so I'll call upon Andrew Tromans to exercise his right of reply.
Mayor, no reply. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In order to be consistent with the other motions, so I will put this to a named vote. So for all those in favour of the motion, please indicate yes. Those opposed, no. And those who wish to abstain, please do so. That is passed. Thank you very much, Council. That, you'll be very pleased to know, brings us to the end after 90 minutes. 90 minutes again will all be need on Wednesday to pass those three motions. Before I go on to procedure 11, I just wish to make one note. I recognise a number of members using their papers as fans. Just bear in mind myself and Adam are looking at all you people with our robes on. To name a contractual dispute, I will not name the company, but the 48 hours anti-perspirant does not stick to its contract. Item 11, questions from members under Council Procedure Rule 11. Members of the Council, to be clear, the question time will be a 30-minute time limit of the session. The first 3 questions to be offered to the main opposition group leader. The other group leaders will be then invited to ask 1 question each. Other members will be invited to ask questions. If the 30-minute time limit is reached, any further questions can be submitted in writing. The usual process for 2 minutes per question and 2 minutes for each reply will apply. I was notified at the start of the meeting with regard to an amendment from Councillor Sean Kesey, so I will give you the floor in order to move that, Sean.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to clarify something first of all. Will we be having the supplementary questions tonight?
We will not, no.
No, okay. In that case, I withdraw the amendment I was going to make. Thank you.
I'll call upon the monitoring officer to clarify the
Apologies,
advice.
just through you, Mr Mayor. There is the ability to put forward a suspension of standing orders. Councillor Kesey, if you wish.
No, he doesn't wish to. That's what he's just said.
Oh, okay. Okay, my confusion.
Mr Mayor, just to clarify, and I may not be very popular, and I don't know whether the time will allow it now, but because we were going to amend the standing orders under Council Procedure Rule 11 to include the supplementary question, I don't believe 30 minutes may be enough after the 6 leaders' questions and potential supplementaries for ordinary members to be able to ask some. So I was going to ask that under Council Procedure Rule 11 that the question time be extended to 45 minutes if time will allow, to allow any ordinary members to ask a question should there be no time left after 30 minutes. And I think Councillor Shawani will second that.
No, I mean,
proposal.
that's absolutely competent. We may need snorkels up on the top table.
We may
but,
do, yes.
Absolutely competent suggestion. Is that seconded? Just ask if it's seconded, Phil. Oh, well, you seconded it. Okay.
On the agenda item that we had earlier in the evening, which is the review of the Constitution, and we haven't got that flexibility. I have no objection at all to the time being extended, but I think after discussing 3 notices of motions, I think maybe tonight is not the right time to do that. And as for supplementary questions, I was a bit miffed when they were disposed of at the last review of the Constitution, so I'm more than happy for those to come back. The next full council meeting, Mr Mayor, I think is not until October. That gives the monitoring officer and the group leaders time to resolve the issues on notices of motions. And whatever means we use going forward, I think that's the correct way.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I note that. The point that Councillor Kesey has raised is a competent, which, if I can paraphrase, is to extend the discussion for 1 meeting only from 30 minutes to 45 minutes and to allow supplementary questions. Can we move that to the vote? The request has been for a named... Oh. I'll take Ryan Priest first and then I'll come to yourself, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I didn't think this would be the fiercest debate of the night. I think the confusion has come from that this was already discussed in the group leaders' meetings, which I know you weren't at, Councillor Hardy, so it's not an attack at all. What I would suggest is, while I support it, it might be preemptive and we can always move this should there not be time at the end and there are people waiting for questions. And that might meet the need to hear all the questions and for Pat to get to the pub.
Thank you very much. And
are you on the supplementary? Okay.
Thank you very much. On a further point of order, Councillor Simon Phipps.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I clarify, is the proposal that we have 45 minutes and supplementary questions? In that case, could I ask for guidance from the monitoring officer? Under the council procedure rules, the council is able to suspend standing orders, which would be to remove that standing order from applying in that circumstance. Reintroducing the supplementary questions is surely creating a new standing order in the middle of the meeting, which I would not believe could be done on just a suspension of the standing orders, because the council is permitted to suspend them, but not to create new ones in the middle of the meeting, so far as I'm aware. That would have to go through full council as a report.
That's an excellent point, Councillor Phipps. I call upon the monitoring officer.
So just through you, Mr. Mayor, just a point of clarification. This is in respect of this specific meeting. There's an amendment, a motion that's been put forward by Councillor Kesey in respect of the restriction that is set out within the standing orders. He has requested that it be amended to allow additional time in terms of the 45-minute and also the requirement for a supplementary question for this particular meeting only.
Is there a provision?
Can you put it for the mic, please, Councillor?
Thank you. So in that circumstances, that is to amend the standing order that is currently within the Constitution, not to suspend it. Now, I'm not aware of an ability to amend them to create new standing orders, which is the reintroduction of something that has been removed. I believe that's an amendment, not a suspension. Now, when it comes to potentially from this point forward, amending standing orders, what would prevent an administration, let's say, that has a significant majority within this chamber with this precedent, amending the standing orders to introduce rules which, quite frankly, negate the democracy within the room? So if we were running this council and we had a majority of 30 or something or another, we could amend the Constitution to say that actually opposition members only have 1 minute to speak and we have 5 minutes to speak, rather than just suspending a particular rule which is fair for everybody. I think that's a dangerous precedent.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the council standing orders, the rules that are permitted within those council standing orders are approved by full council and approved by a majority vote. In terms of the ability to suspend, amend, that is the right of any individual member to put forward for the council to consider, and thereafter a majority vote in order for that to be approved and thereafter implemented. In this particular case, I would say it's a combination of both suspending that particular principle that's within the existing standing orders and thereafter requiring the additional time permissible and the requirement for the supplementary question.
Can I, just before we move on with other points of order, could I just clarify whether the 45 minutes was from the moment that it was proposed? Okay, well, we're already 15 minutes into it, so I'll just let that sit at full council. So we're now down to 28 minutes, I believe, for if we extend it to the 45 minutes. But we'll continue with the points of order. Councillor Alixdale. Councillor Elaine, is it a point of order, Elaine Taylor? No. Ian Kettle, is it a point of order? Can people please remove if it's not a point of order that you're raising? Elaine? We have nobody. So I will move to the... Yeah, I mean, I can respond to hand gestures as well as buttons as well. I mean, I'm relatively pliable as the mayor. I am going to move to the vote, which was 45 minutes from the moment that he stood up, which was 16 minutes ago, to extend the debate for 45 minutes with supplementary questions. Can we please vote on whether we agree with that by voting yes or no, with the request that it's a named vote? Okay, that is clearly lost. I now believe we'll have about 15 minutes. I'll be advised by Steve, with regard to the time for procedure rule 11, I call upon Councillor Marco Lungi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And before the clock starts, please, I wish to delegate my second and third question to colleagues. Second question to Councillor Jan McGough and third question to Councillor Jack Thompson. So, Leader, residents understand that introducing a new waste collection system is a major undertaking, but they also expect some basic competence. What they cannot understand is why you and your cabinet member chose to launch it before it had the vehicles, the staffing, and the operational capacity to deliver it successfully. Does the leader now accept that this Conservative administration launched the new waste collection service before it was ready for public operation? And who should Dudley residents hold accountable for the months of disruption, miscollections, overflowing waste, the flies and the maggots? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I call upon the leader to reply.
Could get up, Mr. Mayor, and quote Dave Sparks from quite a few years ago and just say no, but I won't. What the Leader of the Opposition fails to realise is that the rollout of the new waste scheme was time constrained, and had we delayed, like some other authorities, notably Wolverhampton have, then it will cost this authority millions in lost funding from central government. So it is having the pain and the disruption of rolling out a scheme on that scale. And it is a huge scale. We make 300,000 bin collections across this borough every single week. Do the maths. 300,000 every week. On something on this scale, are there going to be issues? Yes, there are. Are the team who have worked hard almost on top of it now? Yes, they are. Are there mitigating circumstances, Mr. Mayor? Yes. The fire at Lister Road, the chemical spillage, even the warm weather. We can't expect our refuse collectors to go out earlier in the day in this heat and then work past 2 p.m. as well on their conditions. People moan about us being a good employer. That's being a good employer. Does it mean that there are issues on some of the collections? Yes. Where those are repeat issues on those collections, then the line management need to manage their teams and make sure that we're doing it correctly and that we're not making the same mistakes and missing the same bins week after week. Now, that affects every member in this chamber. Even I had complaints. I had complaints from all over the borough. But we are dealing with that. This was a monumental effort to roll out this scheme, and had we not rolled it out when we did, then on the levels of food waste that we are collecting, which are record numbers, it would have cost this authority several £million.
Thank you very much, Leader.
No, you know,
is it a point of order? No, point of order?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Allow for members to ask questions. If I could seek your guidance, Mr. Mayor, in this respect, because when those questions are posed and then the responses are so evasive that no answer is actually given, then how should my members deal with this when they're exercising their democratic right in representing their residents?
If you can, I don't think that necessarily is a point of order. I note the point that you received. The leader had the opportunity to respond. I believe the leader of the council had the opportunity to respond. I believe he did respond. I'll move on to your second question that I believe is to be asked by Jan McDonald. Jan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Over 8 months ago, this group, spearheaded by our now leader, Councillor Longi, put together a petition to make clear the borough's strong feelings on the issue of housing illegal migrants. To date, it remains one of the fastest growing petitions submitted to the council, garnering over 3,000 signatures. And also to date, the promised response, a report, has not materialised. The petition was also quite specific. Pertinently, it called for a review into the procedures involved when granting HMO status. Many in here might remember that the response that night was basically a coordinated hit job on Councillor Longy. I sat up in the gallery listening to the pile-on. It was almost entertaining. Councillors ranted about his time as an MP, they ranted about his new party, about his properties, about his time as a trade envoy in Brazil, basically about everything except the actual issues raised in the petition, a pattern that Councillor Kesey earlier identified. At the time, I naively thought that perhaps everything was in hand. It had to be, surely, for them to completely ignore what we'd raised. Alas, no. We're still here, being alerted to a steady stream of HMO applications by concerned residents across Brockmore and Pensnet, Gornal, St James, and just this week again in Castle and Priory. Mr Mayor, it appears the Tory group are basically treating Dudley folk with contempt. Contempt because they've done nothing to implement any of their own measures to address the issues we raised, nothing to implement our suggested measures, and nothing to even produce so much as the promised report on the issue. So, Mr Mayor, we need a report into the current situation in Dudley in regard to HMO applications, both approved and rejected ones, and also covering off crime and enforcement matters related to HMOs as well. Can Councillor Harley, as a matter of urgency, confirm when such a report will be forthcoming?
Just move to regard to the question.
Can Councillor...
Thank you very much. I've allowed him to... I've allowed him to... And relax. I've allowed... Jan, please stop. You were coming to the end of your question. I'm more than happy for Jan to have the 8 seconds or so to ask the question. Please feel free.
Can Councillor Harley, as a matter of urgency, confirm when such a report will be forthcoming, given Dudley constituents have democratically made clear their strong feelings on this issue? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You know, the opposition need to learn not to keep asking questions on subject matters that I'm really strong on. One hotel in this borough used by Serco to house asylum seekers over the last 4 or 5 years. Now we've got none. HMOs brought to planning so that elected members can make that decision. Not bureaucrats, not officers in a room, but councillors elected in this chamber and who sit on the planning committee. And got something here to read out, Mr Mayor. Opportunities identified through the conversion or redevelopment of vacant or underutilised upper floors above commercial premises within towns and district centres. That's his amendment. That's his amendment. That's the very thing that's causing us problems with HMOs that we don't even know about when Serco was snapping them up. And he shakes his head, but it's true. This administration has done more than any, not just in the Black Country, Mr Mayor, but right across the West Midlands in making sure Dudley has some of the lowest asylum seekers in this borough. We have, well, no hotels at all, and he laughs, but Walsall had one of the highest number of asylum seekers, highest number of hotels until there was a very fatal incident where they took them all out. This administration, under this leadership and this cabinet, has kept control on asylum seekers. We threaten hotels with injunctions if they house them, and we've took our own government in the past to account. And that is across the West Midlands with both Labour and Conservative administration, holding the previous Tory government, of which he was a part of, and also the current Labour one. And all councillors, all 7 Mets across the borough, have all done that.
Thank you very much. I mean, fortunately, I've got a clock in front of me, so we can call time for when there's 10 seconds left. I will allow whoever the contributor is those 10 seconds in order to conclude so I now call upon Councillor Jack Thompson, who I believe has got the 3rd question. Councillor Thompson.
Having listened to tonight's debate, can the leader of Dudley Council tell the residents of Neverton and Hollyhall across the Dudley Borough what is going to be the single measurable achievement he is personally going to be prepared for by this current administration and be judged on by over the next 12 months? I thank you very much.
Thank you. Call upon the leader to reply.
Hear and campaign that you lose your seat in 4 years' time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Thompson, thank you very much. You have had the opportunity to call upon Councillor Shaukat Ali to ask the question on behalf of the Labour Group.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our question I'm delegating to Councillor Kathy Baton. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is around the decision sheet on the Crisis Resilience Fund that was signed on the 8th of July last week. I note that the fund is year 1 of 3, that previously we've had funding to deliver the same types of support into the community. I also note that the fund is from the 1st of April to the 31st of March. So I've got 2 questions. One is, when did the council receive the money? And 2, if it was before the 1st of April, why has there been a 3-month delay? Because obviously, I think there's 2 issues there. This money is really, really important to the families that need it. But secondly, it's also incredibly important to the voluntary sector, because they have passported a huge amount on our behalf. And if they have big gaps in their funding, 3 months is massive in the voluntary sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe that Steve Clark wishes to speak on behalf of the group.
Yes, thanks, Kathy. With that Resilient Fund, that was based on the fact that we can now fund other sections moving forward, and we have a complete resilience to any hiccups that we might have. The reason that it was later that we issued it is purely because we had to do the end of year figures. So the end of year figures had to be done first before that Resilient Fund could be put in place. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. I call upon Councillor Ryan Priest to ask the question on behalf of his group.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've not had a recycling collection on the day it was due since the new scheme came into place. I've given up on using my food waste bin because of the maggots that had made it home. And much like many others across the borough, I'm wondering how it's all gone so wrong. And of course, I thank the refuse teams who are working in near impossible conditions. But something has to give. And I'm particularly concerned for those who've had assisted collections for years, who must now reapply, but with no correspondence to tell them so. But actually, my question is for the Cabinet Member for Finance, because he runs a great pub in Stourbridge. And if I go into that pub and I pay for a beer and you've ran out, I get my money back. If I order something from Amazon and it doesn't turn up, I get a refund. Given the council's failure to deliver one of its core services, will you be offering a council tax refund to Dudley residents?
Thank you very much, Ryan. I call upon Steve to reply.
Thank you for your question. No, we won't be offering a refund, but what we're trying to do is make sure we have a good service. Now, we have had the hiccups. As Patrick has said, we've had the hiccups. We're getting over those hiccups, and we're trying to make sure that we offer a really good service within Dudley Council. And you've got to bear in mind that in terms of council tax that people pay, we are the 3rd lowest council tax within the whole of England outside the London area. So it's for value for money, we do very well in Dudley Council. So we won't be offering a refund, but we'll make sure that we do make sure that the service is a lot better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. I call upon Councillor Steve Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will point out, it ain't lost on me with all the reports of the infighting in reform that Councillor Jack McGough stood up and pointed out that Mark O'Lungy don't live in the ward and is also responsible for all the issues that have gone on while he was in government in the ward. So I'll just leave that one there with you. My question is about, I've received this off a few residents today, actually. that they've been notified. I'll read the letter, well, the start of the letter. It says, "Dear parent or carer, we are writing to let you know about change to holiday-free school meal vouchers in the past. Preschool meal vouchers. In the past, families with children who were eligible for preschool meals received food vouchers during the school holidays. These have now been withdrawn. I think it's a government policy that's withdrawn, and then withdrawn from, I believe, the 31st of August, which obviously cuts across the school holidays. I was just wondering whether there's anything that Patrick knows within the council where we're going to offer some support to these families whose children really really need these free school meals and any help they can get.
Thank you, Steve. Before I go to Patrick, I just wonder whether Wayne wants to pick that up as the appropriate Cabinet member. Is that okay with you, Steve? Is that okay with you, Wayne?
If that's okay with the leader. Yeah, thanks, Steve. And the question previous to that about the Crisis Resilience Fund there. So I think outside of this, I'll give you some more details on it. I haven't got everything to hand, but you're right. It's a government scheme. So it was previously the container that it's within has changed to the Crisis Resilience Fund, of which half now forms part of that. So the letter I was made aware of a few days ago, I think it does state that the existing issued vouchers are still usable across that time, so they still will be used. It's not that it's been taken away from any decision that we've got locally on that. It forms part of the new Crisis Resilience Fund and how that goes forward and how the funding goes out. There was a paper to Cabinet a month or so ago as well that spoke about how the Crisis Resilience Fund picks up half, but it also picks up, you remember the mad rush from 12 o'clock until so much support was given out in terms of money, but everyone couldn't get through on that particular time. So the Crisis Resilience Fund takes account of a much wider discretion and how people in financial difficulties can be supported through that funding. I'm happy to talk to you and explain it and allay any fears. If we've got any genuine concerns about when we pick that up in the detail, we'll get Matt Smith, who's the head of commissioning, around that sort of thing to sit round the table and explain and give us some assurances around it. But it's not, on the face of it, taking away and not being replaced. It's just a change of name and process.
Thank you very much, Wayne. I now invite other members to indicate if they have any questions for the leader, Cabinet members or chairs. I'll call upon Elaine Taylor. That is true. I will ensure that I come to you as second within that. I will take Councillor Ian Taylor first. Elaine Taylor.
Mr Mayor, do you mind if I stay seated?
I do not mind in the slightest. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Right, a question for our leader. I wish to raise the dreadful state of the Dudley Southern Bypass. This is the gateway to Dudley, and what a first impression it is. From the overgrown islands to the overgrown trees covering information boards, signage, to the bushes and weeds growing all along the central reservations. Dudley gets to look more dreadful every day. How do we expect anyone to want to invest here? We're talking about Portersfield. How do we want anyone to invest here when the first impression is all these weeds, all these trees growing everywhere? So can the leader please make sure this area gets a thorough, good clean-up, please? Thank you.
Leader.
Bell's about to go. To answer Elaine's question, yes. We had this debate a few weeks ago. We made the decision a couple of years ago when threatened with the possible 114. Do we cut the amount of time we cut grass and control weeds, or do we look after our most vulnerable adults and children? We made the right decision. Now the finances are under control and reserves are now climbing in the right direction, we can once again start to reinvest in those green care services. Now, a lot of the gateways are being maintained now. You'll see some across the borough, and I believe that the Dudley Southern Bypass is also on that list. So, answer to your question, Elaine, yes. As I said, we made the decision. It was the right one. Now we can reverse some of those.
Thank you very much, Leader. We are now out of time, but I did promise to come to Councillor Alex Dale because he did indicate right before the before we got to the points of order. So, Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate that. I was shocked to. You can hear me now. I was shocked to see Brockmore and Pensnet represented in a petition from our colleagues on the other side of the House regarding a new tip for the north of the borough. Mostly because many of the people who live in the ward that I serve live close to the Stourbridge tip. However, there is a small part of Pensnet that may benefit, namely those that live on Tansy Green Road. Can the leader agree, as recognition for his work and constant campaigning, that the perfect way to reward Councillor Satchawani would be to grant the tip reform so desperately crave in his ward of Cosley, potentially on the now surplus to development requirements? Why are you tutting? It's what you wanted. I'm asking you for my... Well, but where do you want it then, Councillor Kesey? I'm asking my question.
Carry on with it. Nobody will hear anybody other than yourself.
Yes, so thank you, no worries. Requirement former school development site on Hen Drive. What assurances can the leader give to myself, for the very few residents on Tansy Green Road that will use the Cosley-based site, that this site will be considered at the highest level and no door will be left closed when bringing a tip to the north of the borough?
Thank you very much, Leader.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to get into a debate on where this tip, if we ever had it, is going to be. What I will say, and what I will give a commitment to, I'll talk about the so-called petition to use Anchor Lane. That petition, really, Mr. Mayor, shouldn't come here. It should go to Wolverhampton Council, because they're the decision maker, not Dudley Council. We've tried for the last 6 months. They don't want to play ball. We think there's petty politics at play. The funding, plan discussed amongst officers of Dudley and Wolverhampton. It seemed to make the perfect fit for both Dudley and Wolves, but it's been vetoed at the very top at Wolverhampton, not from anyone at this end, okay? Reference, could we have a municipal tip in another part of the borough, particularly the north? Yes, we could. It will take time to develop that. It will cost a lot of money. I believe we could afford that now, and as leader, I'm happy to authorise that through the Capital Programmes Board. However, we need an answer as to where you want it, and Reform seem to be shouting loud and clear about it. So I'll tell you what, I'll write to your leader. He can tell me where he wants it in the north of the borough. Does he want it in Sedgley? You're nodding your head. Talk to him. Do you want it in Upper Gornal? Do you want it in Cosley? Do you want it in Gornal, Castle and Priory? And of course, the one thing we've got to realise, Mr. Mayor, is there aren't really many suitable sites. And I'm not going to name Cosley here tonight because Sue Ridden is staring at me. And I really don't want to upset Councillor Ridley.
Absolutely. You think Shaz Salim may be an opponent. You haven't met Sue Ridney as yet. The 30 minutes allowed for questions has now expired. Any members indicating to ask a question can either send it in writing or raise a question at the next appropriate meeting. There is no urgent business, so that concludes the meeting of this council. Thank you so much for your attendance. Thank you.